networking lunch, and that's what it was all about, networking, continuing to know all of the unbelievable and really powerful women that are in our midst today. We want the connections to continue to be made. We want the ideas to continue to be shared. And as we continue with our program, let us continue to rise above the noise. We've got some more captivating panel discussions to follow. We've got some interactive workshops as well, and really inspiring speakers ahead. I'd just like to once again say a big thank you to Avis for chauffeuring our VIPs and allowing all of us to arrive here in style. Another round of applause for Avis. And at the end of our conference tomorrow, we're going to be having a cocktail event, a cocktail celebration. So please make sure that you are a part of that as well. That is at the end of the conference on day 2 tomorrow. All right, as we get ready for the afternoon session, let's do so. Let's dive in with just as much vigor and enthusiasm. It's such an honor to introduce a remarkable leader out here on stage, an individual who really embodies the spirit of youthful dynamism and impact. At just 27 years of age, she has not only risen to serve as a member of parliament, but she holds the prestigious role of Deputy Minister of Information and Communication Technology in the Republic of Namibia. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to the Honorable Emma Inamutula Theophilus.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very nice introduction. Ladies and some gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you all. I hope you had a very good lunch, and I'm very, very glad to be here with all of you this afternoon and today and for the next couple of days to look at really rising above the noise and empowering Africa's women in all the different capacities that we embody on this continent, in this country, and all over the world. Ladies and gentlemen, when I looked at the program for this couple of days, yes.
Can I have your attention, please, ladies? Just want to make sure that everyone can hear you. Thank you. You can continue. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much. 3 words come to mind: leadership, governance, and opportunity. These 3 words that I extracted and that spoke to me when I looked at the planned itinerary of the 2-day program that we're going to have this couple of days, in the speeches, the case studies, the panel discussions, and the workshops that are going to be held here. So I'd really like to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak at this conference, because I tried to never miss an opportunity to be among women who are ready to conquer their worlds and the world in general. But first, let's address the elephant in the room. Am I really a deputy minister and a member of parliament? Yes, I am. And one of the very few in the world under the age of 30. Thank you very much. One of the very few in the world that are under the age of 30, and some argue the youngest deputy minister on the continent. And I do not say this with admiration, but having been in the role as a member of parliament and deputy minister for over 3 years now, I am convinced more than ever that we need young women in top leadership in government. So, just a little bit about me. Yes, as introduced, I'm 27 years old. I'm a lawyer by profession, transitioning into digital law and a lawmaker born and bred in Windhoek, Namibia. How did I get into politics and government? Well, an opportunity presented itself and I grabbed it. And how am I faring in my work thus far? Well, the public is the one to judge me, but I think it's quite well considering that I'm a guinea pig in this process, being the youngest member of parliament and deputy minister at a time when it was very difficult in 2020 when I was appointed at the age of 23. So why do I say this? Thank you. I say this because as the theme is of this very conference, being having to rise above the noise, it took some getting used to for people who are much older than me who would say, you are barely out of diapers and you're the same age as my granddaughter to actually take anything I say seriously. I would like to think that at the very beginning of my leadership journey in my profession, but as a young woman on this continent in my country, I've been leading way longer than the opportunity presented itself. I'd like to put this in context. In respect of a domestic setting, I'm a firstborn daughter. So as soon as my younger siblings arrived, I've been systematically delegated tasks to complete in respect to myself, but also my younger siblings. This is something I absolutely advocate for because it teaches one responsibility quite early in your developmental life and years. And my only ick with it is that the level of responsibility apportioned to girls, and particularly young African girls, is never equal to the work and responsibility apportioned to young African boys. Then I had the privilege to go to school and had the honor to serve in leadership positions in society groups. I found myself always being class captain or prefect and head girls at my school. Again, I learned about this immense responsibility for girls and young women to act that way and this way, and to do that and do this, but that same responsibility was not always apportioned to the boy child. In fact, I would hear the phrase for the first time in high school that boys will be boys, whatever that means. Then I transitioned into my career, at the time being a legal practitioner, and got quite a shock and quite a surprise that almost being confronted with having majority men in senior leadership and management in corporate, board members of companies, and senior politicians in political parties. Somehow, girls, women, and young women can lead society in almost every other setting, but they're not particularly, or it seems that they're not particularly cut out to lead in areas where there's an economic benefit and recognition. This is not me saying, it's patriarchy speaking. So one would wonder, please make this make sense. So many questions about the value of a 23-year-old young woman to add to governance, to add to leadership in a country where 60% of the youth population is under the age of 13. And that's Namibia's statistics. So one wonders why there needs to be a disconnect of women and young women, particularly in countries when the data, the stats prove otherwise, that they make up a majority of the population. I want to quickly pivot a little bit in my remaining 5 minutes. For long, we have had the governance of our countries in the hands of men who have dictated and determined what priorities our nations will have. Granted, we both hold up half of the sky, and therefore all of us deserve an opportunity at the decision-making table. And because, unfortunately, for decades and centuries, only one perspective is holding up the rest of the sky for so long, and in the famous words of Thomas Sankara, there are many matters that have fallen between the cracks in our societies, in our countries, in our economies, in our developmental journey as states. Yes, our histories, and I believe Namibia and South Africa have a shared history because Namibia is also a former apartheid colonized country. And our past, especially between our two countries, have played such a big part. But I do believe that the main culprit is patriarchy, because in whatever oppressive setting, patriarchy seems to be the common factor. All over the world, we are witnessing setbacks in the progress we have made in getting all of us in this room where we are today, attributed to the work of feminists and feminist allies who don't always identify as feminists, but are actually feminists. I could make a long list of achievements in terms of human rights, also known as women's rights in some cases, especially in politics, health, particularly around sexual reproductive health, and pediatric HIV and AIDS, education, the creative industry, the financing industry, where we have made great strides in bringing women to the front and bringing them to the table of decision making. Yet, we are still witnessing serious setbacks. And I have a feeling, I don't know about you, but I continue to have this serious feeling about this setbacks being a targeted attack on women's progress and women's empowerment, and we are not even where we want to achieve some of the goals we have set ourselves, sometimes even 30 years ago. The opportunities are, of course, bountiful, and there is still so much for the taking and still so much work to do. Look at technology, for example. The fourth industrial revolution is disrupting and reshaping businesses, governments, and societies. Like the three industrial revolutions before, we need to fight for women to be at the front and center of this revolution. This one is ours as women. We will not and cannot be left behind any longer. In the role that I've been entrusted as Deputy Minister of Information Communications Technologies, I take this responsibility very seriously, and I hope that in every sector that we spearhead as women in this room, we ensure that technology becomes the revolution that women will fully emancipate. Ladies and gentlemen, do we all have the responsibility to rise above the noise? I believe that the real question is, do we have any choice? Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Wow, wow, wow. That was powerful. Honorable Theophilus. Unbelievable stuff there. I think your journey is not just impressive, it's such an exhilarating roller coaster of impact and true inspiration. We're honored to have you in our midst. Thank you so much for those words. Wow, another round of applause. Yeah, she has ignited and reignited a spark in all of us. Let's continue. Let's continue this spark. Let it continue to shine bright now with our next individual that's going to be coming up here on stage and really talking about engaging men in women's economic empowerment. Such an honor to welcome the Managing Director of Coca-Cola Beverages South Africa and the 2023 Top Empowerment Lifetime Achiever Award winner, Velaphi Ratshefula.
The CCBSA Gender Inclusivity Agenda, it's actually anchored in the whole principle of inclusivity and diversity. We truly believe that if we harness the intellect, the energy of all South Africans, nobody can stop us. CCBSA belongs to all of the people of South Africa, which includes women. They've got critical skills women, skills and expertise that they can use to advance the business to go forward. Thank you very much. Thank you, Carol, for the nice introduction, and Deputy Minister, thank you very much for just exciting us. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is such a privilege to be given a platform to speak to a group of esteemed, highly accomplished, and woke women. You can see at home I've got Gen Zs and... But it is also equally intimidating. You, more than anyone, can speak with depth about the challenges that you face, both in and outside the workplace. These challenges are your lived experiences. Many women go through their entire life working hard to navigate the world to make it easier for themselves and others. Therefore, it is with great humility that I make my address this afternoon to add my voice to the theme that is and has become even more important, if not urgent. In fact, quite imperative. The theme is Rise Above the Noise, Empowering Top Women in Africa. I took the liberty of removing top from the topic because it is about the empowerment of all women in the continent. As a father of 2 daughters and a son, I'm having these conversations and I have renewed and deeper appreciation for the true empowerment of women. I'm actually born and bred by a single woman. I think of myself, believe it, as a feminist, or at least one in constant making and remaking. And this has meant that I've had to and will continue to undertake a lot of unlearning. Unlearning masculinity and beliefs that are not consistent with the basic principle that women and men are inherently equal in the home, at work, and in society. Men and women are equal. God gave us talent equally. In my role as MD for Coca-Cola Beverages South Africa, I've done my best to play my part to help create a cohort of women who are empowered, resilient, and have serious mental fortitude. They can hold their own in business and are helping shape our organization and create lasting legacies for themselves. But it is concerning that we still tackling the challenge of gender equity and women empowerment, not only in the continent, but around the world. We have seen this resurgence of women oppression in some spheres of our society in the forms of gender-based violence and men reinforcing their dominance. We have also seen how often women will perpetuate the disempowerment of other women. This is a topic for another conference. Hopefully I'll be invited next time. All this when the agenda of gender equity started as far back as the late 19th century and early 20th century and gained prominence in the late 1940s. In 1948, gender equality was made part of the international human rights by the United Nations General Assembly. And in our South Africa, our lovely South Africa, women empowerment was put on the agenda officially in 1996. With the adoption of our constitution, only then, women were legally recognized as equal citizens, at least on paper. For African women, this was a critical milestone because they suffered triple oppression of race, class, and gender. In fact, if they had some form of disability, it will be the fourth obstacle that they deal with. Let us park South Africa for now. By any standard, this discussion has been taking place for a very long time, and I'm certain women are exhausted of talking and fighting for something that men don't have to fight for. A man can dream of becoming a CEO. And if you have access to the right places, have the right coaches, sponsors, and resources towards your capacity and capability building, your journey to CEOships is within reach. Men never have to ask themselves if they will be accepted in a medical school, engineering faculties, or learn trade. It's always a given that men can enter these fields. Women had to fight hard for this right. And when they could eventually enter these spaces, they still remained primary caregivers at home. Yes, there are men who have started assuming this role, but statistically, the burden of care remains primarily with women. And this adds to their mental health and challenges and exhaustion whilst they need to pursue their careers. For me, that is why we need to shift the conversation a little bit to take a critical look at and discuss what lies beneath and some of the system challenges women still face. The Standard Bank Top Women Conference has and remains one of our key platforms for debate, engagement, and reflection on how far we've come on this journey of transformation and economic inclusion of the previously marginalized. As a country, and as business in particular, we've played a major role and have made some great inroads in helping correct past imbalances. And for this, we should be proud. The importance of diversity, inclusion, and economic empowerment for women to end poverty and equality can never be overstated. For example, it is estimated that gender gaps can cost an economy about 15% of a country's GDP. Most of us have very clear ideas of how to go about achieving true empowerment of women in business. We have tested and implemented some of these ideas and turned them into actionable plans, and we know they work. But why is it taking us so long, and in some cases we are regressing? It almost seems like we need to build a case for women empowerment once more again. I believe that we need to accept that we may have discounted what should have been a big part of the agenda, making men an integral part of the conversation. Not including men is akin to slaves talking about their emancipation, but the people who hold the keys to ending slavery are not part of the conversation. The power sits with the men. We need to bring them on the table so that we can break this thing through together, collectively. We all know that advancing any agenda will require a critical voice of pragmatists, from those that hold the power to amplify the importance of the agenda and, most importantly, to support it. It starts with conscientizing our boys from a young age. Both women and men are responsible for the true empowerment of women. I cannot claim to have known this when we started our transformation journey at CCBSA. I did have a vision. Our business is quite new. We were formed in 2016 with the amalgamation of almost 90% of the bottlers in South Africa. My vision was quite simple. We needed to achieve 50% of women representation in leadership positions. That was the vision that we had. It was a 5-year vision that we put in place. Today, I'm proudly to say 52.1% of leadership, it's women. What I particularly like is that you go to some of our bigger operations. You go to Midrand manufacturing plant, Devlin manufacturing plant. You go to Gqeberha. Those production sites are run by women. In my dream, I saw a possibility of the impact CCBSA can have in our communities and how profitable growth in the long term is tightly linked to the development of communities and country. I firmly believe that we as business, if we want to succeed, we've got to deliver shared value that is shared by ourselves and communities in which we operate. If we don't do that, we'll become an island and we'll be isolated. And that inclusion includes women. Part of the work included influencing entire CCBSA population and making sure that we can identify specific areas where we were weak in terms of women representation. I think we were well represented in HR historically. We were well represented in some of our trade marketing activities and in finance and public affairs. We were well represented. The challenge was to break engineering, science, technical functions, which holds big budgets and big responsibilities. That's where the challenge was. And I think we've made progress as I have illustrated. So we took bold steps and appointed women in serious core functions in the organization and put resources behind them. Even before COVID-19, not the same extent as it is during the pandemic, we had introduced flexible working hours because we understood difficulties of women that women have to contend with as mothers, caregivers, partners, and leaders at work. And quite frankly, COVID was a blessing for us because it forced us to confront ability to deal with those challenges for women. I'm proud of the work we've done to transform our organization. As leaders, we were aware that correcting past imbalances is not going to be easy, but it had to be done. Any change required collaborative action, true commitment, tremendous effort, and courage. But unwittingly, we realized we may have created a sense of alienation amongst our white employees, mainly, and also males in general. We saw the interaction of race and gender play itself out. We had to reassure our white colleagues, and all men in particular, that the advancement of women was in no way going to distract from their progression into leadership, particularly those that are talented. We were very clear that advancement was going to be meritorious, but that we were going to have a focus on appointing certain groups, particularly women in specific positions, so that we can make the progress that we required. In many continents, including ours, men continue to hold most of the keys to opportunities and resources. And we are also custodians of the attitudes and behaviors which limit the potential of women as men. In their extreme form, the prevailing attitudes towards women is culturally embedded in beliefs held by men, continue to drive unacceptable high levels of gender-based violence in our country specifically. The fight for equality, economic and social freedoms, safety, security continues, but this is not a fight for the women only to fight by themselves. The fight starts with the boy child and our development into youth and then adulthood. Just as no one is born racist in South Africa, no boy child is born a sexist. Even worse, a monster. These traits are all observed and learned, so they can be eradicated by also learning positive behaviors. Girl and boy children need to grow up seeing what is possible and understand deeply that gender, just as with race or any other classification, does not define who they are and what they can achieve. It has been proven that diversity ultimately leads to shared success across societal spectrum. Schools, universities, public and private sectors, in sport and in entertainment. By the way, just look at the Springboks. The transformation that Springbok have done has been after they embraced diversity. When you look at the team and you look at the spectators, they reflect South Africa. So if you want proof that diversity works for business, look at the Springbok. They even have women. They've got women in the Springbok. So you don't need any other test case to say it works for business. It has been proven that diversity ultimately leads to shared success across our societal spectrum, as I said. Economist Claudia Goldin was last week awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics for her work in examining the gender pay gap. Goldin was recognized for her research, which showed that women are paid less than men on average, despite having higher education levels. We have to continue to advocate for the advancement of women in the workplace, and most importantly, ensure earning parity levels. We know through our own experiences in CCBSA that gender representation has been one of our critical building blocks of our continued success. But this transformative force needs to be replicated across all sectors of our society to underline the true value of women as contributors, builders, thinkers, innovators, and pioneers. The importance of diversity and economic empowerment of women to end poverty and equality cannot be overstated. Empowering women has cascading effect in communities and on our broader society. Where I come from, which is a small place in Soweto called Dobsonville, we know if you empower a woman, you empower the whole family. Mm-hmm. But we will never achieve the complete empowerment of women without the meaningful engagement and requisite behavioral changes of men to change the fabric of society where women are safe, recognized, and rewarded. The transformation journey is the responsibility of all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, the cost to advance women empowerment and integrating them into mainstream economy is not only a noble one, but an important one that makes economic sense, and it is an imperative for our country and our continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Taterachi Fula, thank you so much. And a big thanks as well to Coca-Cola Beverages South Africa, wonderful partners. I was putting pressure on him because we want to just add on to his words here. And we are hosted now in our next panel discussion by Coca-Cola Beverages South Africa as we continue this discussion and talking about the growing importance of women's empowerment in Africa. So let's really delve into this vital topic of women's empowerment across the African continent. Please welcome to the stage our panelists. The head of relationship banking proposition at Standard Bank, Thandiwe Njobe. General Manager, KFC Africa, Uakhona Qengqe is here with us today. We've got Country Lead, Talent and Development, Coca-Cola Beverages South Africa, Leola Britton, here with us today. And Human Resources Vice President at Coca-Cola Africa, Shalini Bateja. This is really, really exciting. Okay, where do I start? Leola, let me start off with you. We're looking at research by UN Women, and based on that research, we know that women tend to have multiple roles, and we've been discussing this, women having multiple roles at home and at work. How are women's roles evolving? Okay, let's grab the, yeah.
Thank you very much for the question, and thank you very much, everybody, for inviting me to be part of the panel. In answering your question, I think about my own childhood. When I was a little girl, I used to watch a program on television called Who's the Boss? And it was, the program was about a male housekeeper, and he was a housekeeper to a female lawyer. And I think the reason why the show was a success many, many years ago is because it was based on a premise of gender opposites, and it was unusual in those days. If you bring it back to 2023, that's not an unusual scenario to exist in our society and in our workplaces, certainly today. If I think about my own workplace, where I come from, our MD just gave away our figures in terms of women in leadership. We've exceeded our 50-50 target in terms of women in leadership. So it's not unusual for me to be surrounded by very strong, intelligent women that are in very senior roles and that are also in technical roles that used to be the ambit of males primarily. I do think that the glass ceiling is busy breaking, and I do think that society has a little bit of catching up to do in terms of the changing face of women and our roles that we play in society today.
Oh yes, oh yes. Sisakon, I just want to make sure your mic is on. Can you just switch that on? All right, let me come to you, Shalini. You're Human Resources Vice President of Coca-Cola Africa. How are companies benefiting from empowering women?
Is this working?
It's working.
So I don't need this. Thank you. Look, I think, as far as I remember, the gender equality and even diversity discussion started 10 years or 15 years ago. And that time it was like, it is for business, and the case for business was being built. But I think those days are gone. I mean, I think it's clearly established that the diversity agenda, whether it's race, whether it's women, is no longer a good to do thing. It's no longer a thing you do for the society. It is something you do for the business. It is very, very clearly, there are many researchers, and we know it from our teams. It's very clear that if you have diverse teams, there's more innovation, there's better decision making. If we have diverse teams, the teams represent the consumers, the customers, and then they take better decisions. So it's no brainer that the case for change is no longer a societal change. It's a very established business change. You have better access to talent. Imagine the world, if I say broadly, is 50-50, and not having access to that talent we are missing on some great talent. And there's some research, by BCG McKinsey, that if we empower 30% more women, we will have almost $12 trillion added to the economy of many countries. So there's enough data, enough stats that companies that are diverse have 36% more profit. So I think we know the case. It's about what are we doing to get there.
Yeah, and I think what you've raised as well moves in very nicely to the question I'm going to ask you, Thandi. We're just talking about the empowerment of women and how that can improve economic growth.
Absolutely. So I'll go to the research, and I'd like to answer this question in three parts. So one is, if you look, Forbes looked at some of the top companies that are run by women, and what they found is that those companies are more oriented towards their client needs, therefore they're more successful at servicing their clients, they're able to generate more in terms of profitability, they're more open to transformation, they're more open to challenging the status quo, and they're more open to they're more likely to be socially responsible. So if you just put a few data points just to support that argument, which I found very fascinating, if you look at some of these large global firms, so you look at CVS, large retail healthcare provider in the United States, CEO came in 2021, and what she did was she transformed that company from being a drugstore type of setup into more of a healthcare hub. So she changed the floor layout, she added the partnership, she added the value-adding services. And you can see in that innovation, you're almost transforming and keeping up with the times and the demands of your consumer. Second example in a different industry would be the CEO of Citigroup, who also came in 2021. First Wall Street CEO of a financial services firm, and she focused on the employee experience because she saw that as her avenue to improving on her client experience, which then adds the value to the outcomes. And what she did there was took some fairly bold decisions. Zoom-free Fridays, so no Zoom calls on Fridays, and then she also introduced this hybrid model and embedded that, and her success is evident. And if I may just do one more, because the list is very long, but I know that we don't have a lot of time, is Oracle. So big tech giant, again, CEO came in, a woman CEO, and what she did was she decided to transform Oracle from being a product-led company into a client-led company. And that means orienting yourself so that all your solutions and your deliverables are actually bespoke and suited to your client's needs. And she was very successful at doing that. So I think all these cases to say that women have proven themselves to be able to take those bold steps, to take those steps around innovation, change, transformation, and in that, then almost reorient the companies to continue to be profitable and successful.
Wow, wow. Love those examples. Yeah. Akona, General Manager of KFC Africa. Can you tell us what is the importance of creating these inclusive workplaces?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Carolyn. Firstly, I want to appreciate and recognize the Coca-Cola Beverages South Africa team for having me on the panel today. Thank you so much, partners. So I thought I might want to punctuate this conversation with the real case study, and that's the KFC Africa case study of our journey of inclusion. So if I reflect back on our history of pre-2017, when our leadership team looked nothing like our customers, and I think this agitated us and moved us into action because as South Africa's most loved chicken brand, and on an ongoing basis, we're becoming Africa's most loved chicken brand with a presence across 23 markets in Sub-Saharan Africa, our teams in our head office looked nothing like the people we're serving every day. Our business results also reflected that. As Africa's most loved chicken brand, our sales were not coming in. We were a business that was struggling significantly, very tough times for us, and we needed to get into turnaround. Now, typically what a lot of businesses would do if they need to turn around is that cut costs, that optimize, that look for efficiencies. We did it differently. In 2017, we introduced the role of Director of Transformation, and I had the privilege of being the one to spearhead and lead that agenda for the business. One of the things that we did is we changed the face of our leadership team, is we started to be very deliberate in how our leadership team and our teams in the head office would reflect our customers. We started to be very deliberate in how the agency partners that we're engaging with, who ultimately had the responsibility of engaging our customers, looked and felt like our consumers. It made our insights a lot richer, brought us a lot closer to what our consumers were saying and what they were looking for.
Wow, wow.
And I'm very proud to share that from 2019, actually just before COVID, we had what we thought was our best year yet from a results perspective. 2020-21, at a time when our world was in a crisis, we achieved our best ever performance in the 50 years that we'd been on the continent.
Wow.
And we thought we were done, but our work around transformation wasn't complete as we started to transform even our supply chain, and we looked for every opportunity in the business to be more inclusive, not just of females, but of African females and Africans in general along our value chain. In 2021, we thought we'd reached our best year yet ever in 51 years, but it wasn't the end, because in 2022, yet again, we hit our best year ever in history in 52 years. Wow. And we continue. And really for me, the business cases around, the more inclusive and diverse the tables are, the more inclusive the voices that get to make the decisions are, the greater the perspectives, the better we can start to shape our businesses. I think, like you said, it's not just a nice to have. We don't do it so we can feel warm and fuzzy. We do it because there is no way we can build economies on only half the human capital. Everyone has to be in the conversation. Everyone has to be invested, and it is our responsibility, it is your responsibility to go back to your organization and ask the agitating questions and make sure that wherever you go, there is a woman that you are lifting as you rise.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Shalini, looking at some numbers, in 40% of economies, women's early stage entrepreneurial activity is half or even less than half that of men's. How can we encourage women to take up these entrepreneurial roles?
Yeah, look, there was a very good quote I read: change doesn't take time, it takes action. No, we need to do something to bring the change. I think that the change can be done at two levels. One, as Akona said, each of us has to lead it, and each of us has a remit and a capital, within our families, within our network, within our clubs, within our sports clubs, etc., where we have a network where, like she said, we need to take responsibility to lift women, to be allies. I think what we have to see is, where do we stand as a company, as individuals? Are we protesters? Are we coaches? Are we really transforming? But I think we just need to reflect and take our stand. There's a lot of price to pay if you don't raise your voice. There's a price for silence. So I think we all need to, as individuals in this room, have a capacity to do it. But even organizations, and I can talk for Coca-Cola, and two major elements or programs that I'll talk about. First of all, very recently, as you all know, we had the Women's Football World Cup. It was and I had the privilege to be at the finals. It was an amazing feeling to sit in the stadium of 72,000 spectators who came from all over the world. And this was not the state of women's sports 20 years ago. But a lot of effort has gone to get there. So each company is responsible and is taking steps towards that. But I'll talk about a couple of partnerships, as I said. So during the Women's World Cup, we had a conference that we hosted, which we called as Level the Playing Field, which was a diversity conference. And in that conference, we actually made a partnership with Kiva, which is a microfinancing bank for crowdsourcing, and Coca-Cola Foundation. We had a partnership where we said that we are going to microfinance loans. And Kiva is an organization which in the last 17 years, I think has, if I have my numbers right, dispersed $2 billion of loans. 80% of them have gone to women. And this is how they are really empowering women. And the surprising, not the surprising fact, an amazing fact, the leader of Kiva who joined the conference said that 96% of the loans were repaid. So look at the proposition. So we've partnered with Kiva in microfinancing and those loans. It's a crowd-based, so our employees are going to join in, including in Africa. The plan is that in 2024, we'll have $1.1 million of loans dispersed, and which will become around $4.5 million by 2025.
Wow.
So I think this is one way we are supporting. The other program that is very close to my heart, which we called as 5 by 20 program, where our plan was to empower 5 million women by 2020. We've exceeded our target. But I can tell you, I was based in Asia at that time, in Singapore, and I had an opportunity to go to Philippines, where the small stores, they're called sari stores, they're all run by women. And we had a program where our employees and our partners, we used to train women on financing and how to keep your books and how to get a loan. And I think those small things, they seem, when you think it on a slide, they seem like a bullet, but they make a lot of difference. So I do think companies have a role to play. I'm very proud to be part of a company who takes that seriously. But I do feel we all have a huge responsibility and a role to play. I think one learning I had after going to this Level the Playing Field forum that we hosted or we led was that no action has no value. Like every small action leads to a result. So I would say each of us have a role to play in that.
Unbelievable. Round of applause. Wow. Yeah, Thandiwe, you're a female leader. Can you tell us how is it that we can foster female leadership and grow the next generation of businesswomen?
Yeah, and you know what? It's not a silver bullet, but it's actually quite a simple approach, I think. As long as there's commitment, I think you can get it right. So one is we have to be intentional about being intentional. So these things don't just happen. You can't just put women into the workplace and expect these things to happen. You have to be quite intentional about what does it mean in terms of their path and their growth into these leadership roles. So it requires you to do very active talent management. It requires you to manage your succession planning very carefully and very deliberately. It requires you to create these spaces for the voices of these women to come into those spaces so that we understand from a career point of view what their aspirations are. Bring the men into the conversation. And in fact, do more than that. Get them to be champions. Give them the responsibility to run something. Ask them to reflect on what their contribution is to the development and the journeys of these women. Because I think that they'll like it, but it almost forces that real introspection to say, so how am I actually enabling this? If I am committed to this as a man, how am I enabling it? And then I think, as the MD of CCBA said, you know, women too, we've got to lift as we rise. There's enough space for all of us at the table. We've got to create the leaders that are going to take over from the roles that we play, because we have to believe that there's something else for us to do when we do that.
Yeah, and get rid of this thinking of, she will take my place. You know, there's enough room. Oh, yes. You're going to love this, Leola. When you look at these numbers, the World Economic Forum estimating that the gender educational gap is shrinking. So how do we ensure that we continue, of course, to improve the access to education for girls?
I love that question.
Yeah.
I love that question because I'm looking at my colleagues that's sitting at one of the tables. We take skills development very, very seriously in our business. You have to find ways to unleash the potential of your employees, not only your employees, but the communities around which you operate as well. One of our mantras at Coca-Cola is to refresh Africa every day. And that means that we have an active role to play in terms of our community development. So as an example, we employ over 800 learners on an annual basis and teach them the skills, business skills for them to be successful in whatever it is that they aspire to be. And then from a senior leadership development perspective, we advocate really strongly for sponsorship. It's exactly what my colleague was talking about earlier, where you have to create spaces for advocacy and for sponsorship, because if somebody else sponsors you, then it allows you the ability to rise even higher than what you've been capable of doing in the past. So those are two very strong initiatives that we support within the Coca-Cola business: sponsorship and skills development, not only for our employees but for our communities as well.
Yeah, we talked about igniting and reigniting the spark, and everyone is loving it. On Hopin, we've got a comment saying, from Tshegofatso, Tleane, Tshegofatso, thank you so much for your comment. And she says, these panelists are on fire. Good work, Coca-Cola. Round of applause. They certainly are. You're all on fire. Wow. I want to ask all of you, and I'll start off with you, Akona, what is the importance of collaboration between sectors in terms of promoting economic empowerment for women?
Well, yeah, something I'm very, very passionate about, especially when it comes to supplier inclusion. So one of the programs we're running right now is a program looking at bringing in female poultry suppliers in our system. And it's one thing for us as a brand to do it and be a route to market for these up-and-coming young poultry farmers. But I think if we collaborate in industry with similar organizations who also require similar products, is not only do we become the client to the suppliers, but we effectively open up an entire market to these up-and-coming suppliers, and therein lies the role of collaboration. I don't think one organization can change the landscape, but together we can do a lot more to make sure we are creating sustainable businesses, especially small to medium enterprises. We know how much they contribute to job creation in this country, and we know how much of a challenge that is. So the more we collaborate around our commonalities and around solving for our business needs, the better we can begin to change the dynamics of our economy.
Oh, yes. Shalini?
I think, knowledge is no longer a commodity, especially with, you see, the digitization, with, oh God, ChatGPT. You ask a question and you really don't. So knowledge is no longer a commodity. I think what we need to learn together, we all are trying to solve the same problem. So which means together there is a better solution. Otherwise we all in our silos with limited resources will be trying to solve the same thing. Women mostly go through the same challenges. Men, and it's not just about women. I wish there were more men in the room because it's a lot about them also, right? And so it's about the mindsets are not different, and they're not different in different parts of the world. I've seen Asia, I'm here in Africa. I think we are solving similar problems. We have similar challenges, similar opportunities. So if we collaborate the resources, I think we can do much more and much better. I think HR has a role to play there. We've experimented a little bit. I know in China, for example, we had partnered with Alibaba and exchanged and done some things together. We are doing a bit in South Africa, but I think there's a lot of room we can play together, and I think the HR community has a role to bring us together.
Yeah, Neola?
Yeah, I cannot agree more. I think the business case for diversity and inclusion, not only across genders, race, etc., but across sectors as well. We need to become more of a sharing society, and I think as the world changes and grows, we've discovered that the way in which any business grows is through sharing and collaborating, because when you share and you collaborate, that's where you see business growth. And so for me, I think that there needs to be more platforms of this nature where different sectors, people come together to talk about issues that's important. And the more we collaborate and share as an industry, the more our society and our economy grows as a collective. So it's a win for everybody.
Yeah. Sandiwe, the power of collaboration.
Yeah, so, and it takes me back to a conversation I was having with a colleague last week, and we were talking about just the importance of creating women fund managers in the financial services sector, because women fund managers are more likely to then invest in women-owned businesses, which are now currently not receiving their fair share of investment receipts. And it strikes me because within our world, which is a banking world, we're looking at ways of creating this capacity across the continent among women, because those women are going to invest in businesses that become our clients. And so I think you have to think through your ecosystem and think about almost like beyond banking, what are some of the things that we can do to support investment in the continent for more sustainable businesses and economic growth. So I think it's a critical one, and we don't often approach it in that way, but there's real opportunity within sectors and between different sectors to drive a kind of different thinking to promote more women's participation and sustainability.
Yeah. What can businesses do to inspire positive action and transformation? I'll start with you.
Yeah, and it's these types of things. So we've got to tell stories. Okay. I find stories are the most inspiring. So we've got to find ways of telling stories of success and connecting those people that will benefit from that to those stories of success. So platforms like this, but we also operate in a world where there's a lot of social media. We've got technology to enable wider and further distribution. And I think we've got to be really taking our stories and our messages out to a wider audience and bringing people together around some of these issues.
Yeah. Viola?
Yeah, I'm nodding vigorously. I agree with you. I think that it's platforms like this where we have an opportunity to engage with each other.
Yeah.
And I think that businesses we need to act as an example to others, and we need to use these platforms as an opportunity to share our stories with each other, because we hope that we'll inspire others to do the same and more. And so that just means that synergy and growth then multiplies.
Awesome stuff. And Akona?
Yeah, I mean, everything you ladies have both said is spot on. And I think also beyond that, we have to look at transformation as not just a triple BE scorecard tick box. It's beyond that, right? It's making meaningful impact. And I think the organizations that are doing it really, really well, not for the scorecard, need to start sharing their successes. Even small successes, let's celebrate the small wins. Let's not wait until it's a level 1 achievement, but every small success, every story that we can profile, I believe there's power in storytelling, so fully agree with you. Let's tell our stories. Let's celebrate the small wins.
Let's get final thoughts from all of our panelists here. Because, wow, we've covered so much. And I think what's lovely here is we are inspiring this positive action and transformative progress for women across Africa. When you just hear and you see the examples out here on stage and hear what it is that they're doing in their different organizations and the different sectors. Closing words, final thoughts.
I think a couple, what gets measured gets done. So I think it's very important to measure. And I think I'll say another thing, bring the men along in the journey. Many decision makers today, people who are taking decisions are men. And unless we educate them, unless we get them along on the journey, it's not going to work. So really educating the men, bringing them along is very, very critical. So those would be my closing remarks.
Great stuff. Viola?
For me, it's about advocacy, it's about storytelling, it's about sharing, it's about growth. With diversity comes inclusion. With diversity and inclusion comes creativity. It includes growth, and that just means that everybody grows together.
Great stuff.
Yeah, mine is really encouragement to, especially the women in the room who've been the first woman in a room at a table. It's good to be the first, but refuse to be the only one. You have a big responsibility to make sure that you can bring other women along on the conversation. And then lastly, the men are critical to this conversation. I think my own journey has primarily been sponsored by men around me, and so we definitely need to bring them in if we're going to win.
Thank you, Akona. Thandile?
Yeah, I think so. We influence in the spaces that we operate in. We all operate in personal spaces. We have nieces, we have daughters, we have sisters, we have friends who have children. I think really focus in on those girl children and start to build those leaders from an early age to bring that confidence into their own journeys. And then as women leaders, get the men, lead the men in the way that you want them to appear, to support and promote the development and the empowerment of women. So for the men in your team, show them what it actually means to be a proponent of women's empowerment and transformation.
Wow. You hear from all of our panelists, very well sought out. And what it is that we've heard from them today, fantastic. Really enjoyed this panel. And we once again want to say a big thank you to Coca-Cola Beverages, South Africa, our partners, for putting it all together. Just take a look at this.
When you think about diversity, I really see CCBSA being a microcosm of our Rainbow Nation.
Having joined CCBSA in 2019, I have truly experienced the inclusion of females in the workplace that is done through deliberate action.
It's a privilege to work for a company that prioritizes women and consistently contributes to empowering females and putting us in a space where we no longer need to fight for recognition and appreciation.
For me, economic inclusion is about ensuring that as we gain profits, as we grow as a company, we bring our communities along.
I'm very lucky to work for an organization that has placed gender equality as one of our strategic objectives. So that for me, it's important. It was probably one of the things that attracted me to CCBSA.
Thank you so much, Coca-Cola Beverages South Africa, and thank you to our panelists for that really engaging conversation. Thank you all so much. Wow. We're seeing all of your enthusiasm as well online, all of your questions, your input. Keep it going, keep it going. This is really, really awesome, and what this conference is all about, networking, learning from each other as well. Now, what's to follow is a really interesting case study, and we're going to be talking about toxic work environments. Enough is enough, yes. Get ready to get a little uncomfortable. It's a big conversation. It's a big conversation, yeah. In the pursuit of our dreams and the pursuit of happiness, what we found is that the reality of working in a toxic environment can strip away the joy and laughter from our professional lives. So we're going to now delve into a conversation, and this will help serve as a roadmap that will offer women the tools to reclaim their voices and provide employers with a blueprint for a revolutionary transformation of their toxic work culture. Let's welcome on stage CEO Mandate Molefe, Nene Molefe.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for this opportunity to share this with you. Let me get straight into the case study. Now, the benefit of being in the field like I have been this year is my 23rd year working owning my business, working in the field of whole system culture change, including creating inclusive cultures, is that I've had the benefit of working also at a global level. So one of the case studies I want to share with you, just a short highlight, is that in France, okay, around the issue of harassment, the issue of toxic culture. In France, there's a telecom company called Orange. It's a cell phone company. They were accused of moral harassment, leading to a wave of suicides. 19 suicides, 12 suicide attempts, and 8 cases of serious depression. Now, what happened is that the CEO, Mr. Lombard, said, "I will have these job cuts one way or another." I'm quoting him. "One way or another, by the window or by the door, due to a strategy of job cuts that I have to implement." He was given a prison sentence, fined after being found guilty of institutional harassment and creating a culture of routine workplace bullying. Now, I'm quoting this because in France, harassment and bullying in a workplace is regarded as a criminal act. It's actually a criminal act. Now, where I wish, and I wish would be like that at home. Now, I want to say that although the Employment Equity Act states in Section 6.1, it does contain what we call prohibition of unfair discrimination. The Department of Labor Code of Practice on Harassment, some of you might know it, is just a guideline, okay? You choose whether it's a guideline. The onus of proof, Section 6 of it, the onus of proof is on the complainant. Now, if you are the one being bullied, the onus of proof is on you. And this is a tall order. We know if you've gone through some toxic environment in the workplace. Now, let me give a tip. In the work that we're doing, and I want to share with you a local case study from a current client, and we're still in the journey of doing that. There are good signs that they are doing. A tip that I want to share with you if you are not doing that. If you do an engagement survey, for example, do not just ask on a 5-point Likert scale that do you feel engaged, 60% of the people feel engaged, 16% people feel the sexism or whatever. While those are important questions, what we have begun doing, and it has proven to be very helpful, we've added 2 important questions at the end. And we are asking that in the last 12 months, have you personally experienced discrimination or exclusion in your workplace? And then we give them 3 options. The green is yes, the red is yes, if people have experienced that, no, or prefer not to state, okay? And then the second question says, have you experienced any form of bullying or harassment in your specific division in the last 12 months? What we have found, just the last client we did this, is that 20% were in the red. They said, yes, they have experienced this. 17 were in the yellow, where they said, prefer not to say. Now, if you see that, you must somewhere add it. It's 37%. You know why? If you are sure that you have not experienced this, you will not say prefer not to say, right? So that gives you an indication of lack of psychological safety. And we don't stop there. We then ask them, from whom did you experience this behavior? We then list, do that, you'll see your survey will be different. We start at the board. From whom have you experienced this? Board, ExCo member, senior middle management, line manager, co-worker, service provider and supplier, because that's also possible, client or customer. What was shocking, just in the last one, is that 22 members, staff members who completed the survey said they experienced this from the board. Ne? Now, you know there are board members who can interfere, ne? Who can cause havoc without going into detail. And then others were staff, ExCo members, but the highest was line managers, where around 281 said they in the last 12 months, they experienced this from their line managers. Now, this gives you tangible information that this is what is happening in your organization. So I call this enough is enough. Let me share with you some tips of what we did and we're still doing in this organization. Number 1, you must push for a vigilant board. Organizations, those that have boards that are listed, whatever, organizations have board sustainability and ethics committees, right? So we presented to the ethics committee the results of this. When they saw that there are how many members, 22 members who have experienced this harassment from the board, believe me, their eyes were like this. And it said, we are going to work this journey with you. So the second point, the survey results need to be taken seriously. So here, what we did, and I like it when the CEO follows our recommendation, that the survey results were taken seriously. So what happened is that throughout the whole organization, each ExCo member, coupled with us, we were helping them, each ExCo member delivered the results of their division, okay? Because sometimes people look at you as if, who is saying this? So we are saying, no, you don't have to agree, but this comes from your division, so say it with your mouth. That in my division, these are the people who have experienced harassment, and these are some of the things that we are going to be doing. The third thing, which is really useful, is that they implemented what is called listening circles. Now, listening circles, and I know organizations have focus groups and all that. The difference here, the listening circles, you need to implement a different type of quality of listening. You know, if you've done work on listening, you know there are different stages of listening. You know, the first one is just downloading. I'm looking at you. If there's a finance manager presenting us, she's going to tell us about tightening the belts, you know. So there's just downloading. We're talking about generative listening. So we also had to train ExCo that this is how you listen differently. And then looking at the fact that every business unit must embed the psychological safety and identify between 3 or 4 strategies. We gave them about 12 building blocks for psychological safety. Identify 3 or 4 strategies that you are going to embed on psychological safety and adopt, including coming up with BU-specific strategies as well. Another tip, training on the role of the bystander. We equip the organization on active allyship. And do you know that, I'm sure you'd agree with me. Do you know that sometimes you can be a bystander, ne? And you are observing a bullying situation. You are observing somebody being routinely excluded, and you do nothing. The worst form of harassment is when a bystander is silent. Especially if you have power to do something. You might have positional power. So there is a whole case for ensuring that bystander training, that when you are a passive bystander, you are actually spreading the toxicity. And then vocalize. We also spoke to the CEO and he agreed, vocalize the commitment to suspend or to fire bullies once you know who they are. Okay, so it took long to convince him, but we said, fine, you might not know who they are now, but look at the results that they are telling you. So you must tell the organization in your roadshows or town halls, whatever word they use, that you are committing that there is a zero tolerance, and you are committing that should you catch someone, of course there's labor relations, else you do investigations and all that, should you catch someone, you are committing that you are going to suspend, you are going to fire, whatever is appropriate. And let me tell you why that is important. Let's say this is a town hall. When the CEO says to everybody, this is what I commit to, people will hold him accountable, right? And then DEI or Transformation Forum must be actively supported. Because sometimes transformation forums, they try and raise these issues, but because somebody says, listen, a transformation forum often is volunteers, your core business is elsewhere. And your boss says, listen, I didn't employ you for this thing, right? I employed you for the real work. So what we said and what the CEO did, which was very useful, he met with the transformation forum members individually to tell them the support that he has, to reassure them and tell them that he is indeed appreciating the additional work that they are doing in order to make his organization more inclusive. Another point is board and EXCO dashboard. It's no use if you go through all of these things and then what you do, so the panel has just said, what is not measured is not done. So you need to have a dashboard that says, how are we going to measure progress on what we have identified? And it must be clear. If you are saying every quarter, the board and the EXCO should say, this is the progress that we are making on the results that we have seen. There is no perfection, I know, but what I'm seeing with this organization, and we're traveling the journey, is that the commitment that they are showing, and yes, the pressure came from the board, but the commitment that they are showing for me shows that indeed they can get somewhere. Because abdicating our role, when I spoke about bystander, abdicating our role as bystanders, when you bear witness to harm, silence is the worst thing you can do, as I mentioned before. And I don't want to underestimate this, because often bullies are untouchable because of the following. They are staff performers, or they are said to be, this one is a star performer, this one is a money spinner. I've got all the terms that they're saying. This one is a money spinner, this one is an income generator, this one is a revenue multiplier. Therefore, even if you know he's bullying, but because he's the one who's putting money on the table, he's the one who's giving more revenue to that is often what needs to be highlighted, that we are not, there's a halo that we put on certain leaders because we think they are so powerful. If you really want to make a shift in your culture, is that those very people who are called money spinners, that's where you need to start. Because ask yourself this question, is a manager truly performing if there is toxicity in his team or her team? Can you call them performing? And we send double signals. We sometimes give people an award to say this is the best manager, and then somebody who's climbing the stage, I said, this person is oppressing, and there they are. We give them whatever it is that they are giving in the organization. You send in double signals, and you are countering the work that we are doing. So what happens is that they instead, these so-called money spinners, they leave brokenness behind. They leave brokenness. If they leave your organization, do you know what happens? You have to pick up the pieces because they've left a department of people who are so broken, who don't know even how, they're so scared. Even if there's a new manager coming, they are so scared because of what they went through, because the organization allowed this type of behavior. So some organizations will rather tolerate toxic behavior in order to generate income, in order for them to increase their revenue, and this indeed must change. In our research, some of the causes of this toxicity, isolated bullying and systemic bullying, microaggressions, being passed over for promotion, even when you know that, the one who's promoted here, and you know that this one truly is because you are being targeted, or withholding work will help you to do your information, related information that could be supplied so that you do work. Withholding work is a form of bullying, especially when you know that I'm holding it and it will make you successful. Or being hypercritical or negative responses or being ridiculed. Supervision or surveillance of an employee with harmful intent, deliberately sabotaging and impeding work performance. Do you know there's a concept of punishing good performers? And I'll tell you why. I'm a leader, okay? I am not so sure about my management or whatever, and because you work hard, every time I say, can you do it? I know you'll do it. I know you'll do it. Every time I come to you, because you are the one who's delivering. I don't want to manage these others, whether I'm fearful or they are the favorite of the boss, whatever. You are actually punishing your good performers. Yes, for a while they'll agree, they'll do it, but at some point they walk away. Or humiliation or being excluded, influencing others to see you as incompetent. Influencing people to see you as incompetent and spreading the narrative, okay? And you are put on the microscope. So in our interviews, it's amazing what people are going through. And another area, which is burnout. I want to say to you that burnout is about your workplace, not your people. Often, when we think of burnout, we think of it as an individual problem that is only solvable by, this is what people would say, just learn to say no, just go to yoga, just do breathing techniques, be more resilient, go to self-help. You know what, I don't have anything against all of those things, but when there's a systemic problem, and then I go to yoga, the problem is systemic. So we need to put in place systemic solutions where evidence is actually mounting that applying a personal band-aid solution to a systemic problem is more harmful than anything. So imagine if you are admitted to a hospital because of burnout, and then I come and see you at the hospital and you are being asked, why did you make yourself sick? That's actually the same thing. I didn't make myself sick, the system. And we must stop trying to elevate things like there are managers who say, I haven't been on leave for the past 3 years, as if it's something to boast about. That's toxic. I don't want to report to somebody who's never been on leave for 3 years. It's toxic. It's not okay. So leaders need to understand that the onus is on them to deal with this. And remember, there's bullying at an individual level, but there's systemic as well. Systemic bullying, the way it manifests itself, the system connives in a manner that covers the severity of the problem, and it is frequently embedded in the way in which workplaces operate. Gaslighting is an area of systemic bullying. When someone manipulates you, right? Manipulates you into questioning yourself. They're so manipulating you, you end up saying, hey, maybe there's something wrong with me. And it's actually done in a systemic way, and there is conniving by more than 6 people around you, and you become so disempowered yourself. So let me end with additional strategies, my last slide. Just additional strategies of what you can do in terms of when you have this toxic culture. The first thing, adopt a team alliance strategy, the power of the collective. Do you know when you experience microaggression or microiniquity, let's say somebody steals your point. We know you're in a meeting, you say something, and the manager says, oh, okay. Somebody else says it, they say, wow, wow. So, and you experience that, right? Do you know that in that situation, it's so difficult to self-advocate when you experience that? That's where the power of the collective, because we are in the same meeting. I saw that it's your point. I saw that your point was ignored. When it comes to my point, sorry, what's your name? Les. Hazel. So I saw it was Hazel's point. When it comes to, even if it's 16 minutes later, I need to say, that point that Hazel mentioned, that is the collective standing together, because on my own, when we interview women, not even women, men and women, when we interview people and I ask them, why don't you speak up? Do you know what's the common answer? I'm afraid they're gonna say I'm petty, you know? And people say, I've been told to get a life. I don't know how many lives you've been told to get, because when you are experiencing that, it's a problem. So we must empower staff also with the skills of active allyship, demonstrate the dangers of passive bystander, make adherence to ethics real, hold the ethics committee accountable. As I said earlier, go beyond just developing what we call anti-discrimination charters. There is now, you can co-create a victim charter. You have to do that, because as a victim, if I'm on my own, and there are elements, sorry, this is not a workshop, there are elements of victim charter that can be helpful. Identify the bully. Bullies need to be fired, guys. Identify a bully, and you know, and you can also use ERG, employee resource groups, you can use unions, you can use DI council to have more teeth and recognize that collective. Make it unacceptable, as I said, to boast about how long you've been at work. Implement a policy that deep dives on the code of harassment. While it is not statutory, you can deep dive as an organization on that. Find a heart keeper, né? Find a coach, find a therapist, find a heart keeper. Know what centers you as an individual. As difficult as it is, recognize when it's time to walk away. Because it is recognized when you need to walk away. Because indeed it impacts you, and it impacts you harder. So I just want, can I say, as I'm leaving the stage, two people, I've done a lucky draw, two people have won my book, A Journey of Diversity and Inclusion in South Africa. You come and see me, Nicole Ramjas, if she is in the room, you have won that, and the second one is Sini Machebe. So come and see me. Thank you.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much. Hey, mandate. Mandate Molefi saying enough is enough. Enough is enough. And we've got some comments for you as well. Nene from Hop In, Nyasha Chuta saying, oh yes, the systemic problems must be addressed. Gabriela Odatua saying, I just love this lady. So a lot of you loving that address. Whew. To another really illuminating case study now, and a journey. We're talking about empowering female entrepreneurs, and we're going to hear about SA Ready's journey with KZN Oils, walking through a personal journey as a female entrepreneur, highlighting the unique challenges faced and, most importantly, the lessons learned. Please welcome to the stage Executive Director and CEO, KZN Oils, SA Ready.
You see over there at the top, in the front of the door. Good afternoon, everybody. Please excuse me, it was pretty cold in my corner during the course of today. I'd like to greet everybody here today. I think we had a phenomenal session. We have CEOs, we have deputy ministers, we have ministers, we have directors. But we also have women that have come here today to listen to our stories, and to hear what we have to say and where we got to where we are and in what way. And I want to acknowledge all of those women. Today we all sit here as equals, trying to listen or trying to do things or change things in our lives or do things differently from what we normally do. I'm here to tell you today about my story or my journey in the gas and oil industry. It started as a housewife, sitting at home looking after 3 children. And my husband came to me one day and said, I need you to come in and count the money at our service station. And that's where this journey started. So, me with my very little knowledge in finance decided to go and count physical money and coins and get him to bank it eventually. And that was the start of standing or beginning the journey in this petrochemical industry. Go a couple of years later, and KZN Oils was born. KZN Oils started as a company that was a success story of Transnet when we won one of the largest contracts in 2001. And that put us on the map and also drew a lot of attention to who we were in this industry. And I have to tell you the story to get this all in context. We continued with this journey. Our children grew up. All of them got into the business because we didn't have time to really spend time with them. So during their holidays, it was easy for them to come into the business, and we spent time with them that way. So all of us sat together, all of us went home together, all of us had supper together, and it just continued. From KZN Oils, there were other companies that were born. And the second one was Champion Healthcare. Run by a female right now. It's been 11 years in existence. They're having their World Africa Health Conference in Joburg. So congratulations to them. We then had KZN Transport, and KZN Transport was born from supplying fuel to our retail sites in KZN. That was also very hard to do, but we had our own logistics company. Eventually, we decided to diversify again, and we had Kulei. Kulei Chicken is a franchise that stemmed from the Nando's kind of concept. I'm not supposed to mention too many names. But last but not least, we decided to get into the telecommunications business. And that was to get connectivity to rural areas that was not able to get fiber there. And we were going to do it via satellite. And that's what we had as a group of companies. So journey was great. We had husband around, we had children around, we had a large complement of staff. We were busy in this petrochemical field or industry. Things were exciting. We were delivering millions of liters. We had 37 service stations in and around the country we were supplying fuel to. I was very protected because my husband was the forefront. He was the entrepreneur. He did the networking. He made the contacts and went to the meeting. And I just sat in the background. I was happy with that. I was very involved in finance. I was very involved in the group's process and procedures. But all that changed in 2021. What happened then is my husband passed away. And I think that's when the real journey started. That's when I had to step up, I had to come to the forefront, and I had to learn things I knew was out there. I knew the difficulties that women experienced. I knew our challenges as mothers, as daughters, as entrepreneurs, as businesswomen. I was aware of all that. But I was also protected. And having said that, when Rajan passed away, I had to step up and I had to step in. And we've had a large group of companies. We had a lot of work to do, and I had to go and find a way to start or to ensure, one, the legacy was preserved, and that for me was very important because, more importantly, it was my way of coping with the grief or with the experience of loss. Excuse me. Secondly, we had a large complement of staff, and I also had to ensure that I continued to ensure that all those people survived. Our staff complement is about 50-50, men and women across the group. And for me, that was a lot of responsibility. What I discovered in that time was that people, partners that were worked with you for 20 years, banking industry, petroleum industry, majors that we dealt with for many years, didn't have confidence in me like they had in my husband. And that was one of the first and hardest lessons I learned. Because I said to myself and to my staff that I've been doing all of this in the background for so many years. When Rajan wanted numbers to go and produce because he needed funds, I did all that. I gave him the intel for him to go and get whatever he wanted so that we could grow our business. When it came to finance, I looked at all our AFSs, I looked at our financials, I ensured that everything was in par. But the minute he passed away, I found that it was very difficult to be a female in this industry. Men didn't take you seriously. I don't think they knew that I knew what it was to sell fuel or lubricants or LPG for that matter. They didn't think I had the capability of running a group with finances that went into the billions. They questioned me. I mean, we have a period of mourning in our culture, which means for 1 year we sit without making very large decisions. And more importantly, when somebody, like especially the patriarch of the family, passes away, you sit, or anyone for that matter, you sit for 16 days in mourning. And you do certain prayers and certain processes to honor the person. The minute our 16 days were up and we got back to work, I had a very important meeting with the bank. And the bank came to me to sit down and talk to me and ask me as to whether I'd be able to manage what we were doing for the past 25 years. I found it a hard question. I found it insulting because they didn't have the confidence in me like they had in Rajan. And I answered the best way I could. It's going to be 3 years since Rajan passed away, my husband. We have continued the business. We have grown the business. We're basically in Africa. Thank you. We basically started in South Africa. We have now moved our business to Africa, into Africa. I had traveled to places that I never ever thought I would travel. When Rajan passed away, he didn't have a plan because he was a true entrepreneur. He had everything in his head. I had to get onto a plane and I had to go and meet with strategic people to go and find out what was his plan. What I had to do in order to continue this legacy. And I did that. Eventually, I think I got a bit more brave. We went to Mauritius to look for business there. My daughter, who's here, we flew 22 hours, people, in economy, because I didn't want to spend money. And there was no direct flights to Mauritius. We went to Dubai, and from Dubai, we came back to Mauritius. But it was an experience. So we got into Mauritius. I then decided I wanted to go to Ethiopia. We went with the forum. I was the only female with about 8 men, brilliant guys, treated you very well, looked after you. But we went and I found a new world. I went and looked at a country that was so diverse and that we were able to get into that country and do brilliant business there. So, you know, I'm standing here before you to talk about a journey that women are trying to get into, more especially into the petrochemical, into the oil and gas industry. It's not easy. We are not taken seriously. They don't trust us when it comes to do networking. Let's be honest, ladies, not all of us know how to play golf. I tried it. I hit my shin so badly. I checked to see if everyone was watching me, and I never touched a golf club again. But those are the experiences we have to go through. I found that, you know, majors, oil majors, look at you and decide, is she capable? But we've persevered. But one thing I do have to raise today is that as much as I found men looked at you thinking that you did not understand this industry, it was also our ladies that didn't take you seriously, that would rather listen to a man in this industry than listen to you who had maybe 30 years worth of experience. And I found that difficult to deal with. We need to start thinking differently amongst us as women to understand and to give each other a chance. If we can do that, we will really overtake this industry. And I find that to be one of the most important things or lessons that I've learned in this 3-year journey or 2.5-year journey since my husband passed. We need to start looking after each other. We need to start acknowledging that you look beautiful today. Not, okay, she's so dressed, she doesn't need to come into this meeting now, let's make her wait. We do that as women. I've experienced such, I won't say bad behavior, but unprofessional behavior amongst us as females, and we need to change that narrative. It's important, especially in an industry that is so difficult to get into. But we're getting into this industry. We're making waves. We are knocking on doors. We are being so brave. We are talking about things we know very little of, but we are learning so quickly. We have people sitting here and that are at my guest that is just got 1 truck, but he's going around talking to people as if she has 10 trucks or 10 tankers. And that's the way we need to do it. We need to do it with confidence. We need to do it with pride. We need to do it with absolute panache. We're breaking glass barriers here. If we had to look at 10 years or 15 years ago, or where women were in this industry, we would never even mention it. We won't even talk about it. It was a man's industry. Where we come today, and there's so many women that are in logistics, in the petroleum industry, that are delivering fuel on their own, that are into LPG. Those are the things, and those are the discussions and stories that need to be told, that need to be spoken about. And we need to talk to each other as to how we can help each other in order to get further in this. Wouldn't it be, thank you. Wouldn't it be absolutely wonderful if a female consortium can run a refinery in South Africa? I want to leave you with just one last thought. We have a lot of work to do amongst us as women, but where we are today compared to where we are 15 years ago, we cannot compare. So, well done to each and every one of us sitting here today. Whatever your journey is, you know your story. You know where you need to go. You know how you need to do it. And you know how to break glass barriers that's never been done before. Thank you so much.
We said it's a top woman conference, right? Another top woman. SA Vani Reddy, what an inspiration. And we've got so many comments as well. Again, messages to you from Hopin. Teresa Vivian Moilwa saying, wow. From counting money at a petrol service station, establishing KZN oils to diversifying to healthcare. Well done. Melissa Lucinda Martin, saying the strength of a woman. You're a true, true inspiration. You really, really are. Thank you so much for being here today and for inspiring all of us. And more strength, more greatness. Well, are you ready for some more top conversations, leading conversations about how powerful we are as women? Yeah? Coming up on stage now, let's hear from project specialist at Gauteng Partnership Fund, or the GPF. Sandra Reiter is here with us, and she's coming up on stage to address us now. Round of applause, everyone.
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting us. Thank you, Standard Bank, Topco Media, for allowing us the opportunity to present at such an esteemed event, which has hosted so many celebrated South African females, women, such as our beloved Olympiad Caster Semenya, businesswoman and philanthropist, Dr. Precious Moloi Masepe, finance executive, Christine Ramon, and our former Miss South Africa, Zosibini Tanzi. Today's event speaks to rise above the noise. And I don't know, but for you or for us as females, successful females, it's just so appropriate. As a successful working female, our lives are filled with noise, such as children, husbands, dogs, in-laws, school bags, etc., etc., etc. But with steely determination and resilience, successful women are able to include everyday life as part of white noise in their working environments. And this is how we can actually rise above it. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm here today to talk about what I love about what I do at the GPF. The GPF being the Gauteng Partnership Fund. The GPF gives opportunity to women to rise above the noise and to become an entrepreneur world by developing homes for people. It is an organization that celebrates and supports women. It is a small but powerful government agency who strives to contribute to the transformation in housing in the Gauteng province. But what does this actually mean? It means that GPF is dedicated at trying to transform and bring positive change in the spatial environment, but also to people's lives. The story of the GPF is quite a long one. We've actually been around for 21 years. And we started out by assisting the Department of Housing in Gauteng to deliver on their social housing mandate. But we've evolved into lending into the private sector to deliver affordable rental housing units into the market, but as well as student accommodation. We are also agents for the Gauteng Department of Human Settlements, and we deliver mega projects, which are inclusive communities, which contain various housing tenure, various housing typologies and amenities. So essentially what we are doing, we are creating new spaces where people can work, play and pray, while attempting to eradicate the spatial inequalities of the past. Over the 21 years, the GPF, Gauteng Partnership Fund, has delivered approximately 20,000 affordable rental housing units into the market through our rent lending products. Our lending products were developed specifically in mind to actually facilitate the development of affordable housing and to leverage senior funding debt through risk-sharing instruments. The GPF, basically how it works is that we put in a certain percentage of debt finance, and then we leverage the senior financer who puts in the balance of the debt, and then the developer will put in a portion of equity, and this is essentially how our financing works. So we actually put in a portion, and then the senior puts in funder puts in a portion. So essentially, the GPF has been able to grow their book to 1.2 billion rand over the last 10 years. And we've also managed to leverage private sector funding for the development of affordable housing of the total amount of 1.7 billion rand, which is a phenomenal feat. So just to say that if anyone is interested in joining us as funding partners, we're always on the lookout. So please have a chat to me afterwards in that regard. In the last 6 years, through our mega projects, the GPF has managed to deliver 18,700 service sites and 13,800 top structures. So what does that mean? 13,800 homes for poor people, or for people that fall within below that will benefit free giveaway houses by the government. We have dispersed on behalf of the Gauteng the Gauteng Department of Human Settlements over 3.8 billion rand, which is a huge amount of money for a small organization. The other program that the GPF is involved in is called the Rapid Land Release Program, and how this works is the GPF goes out on tender into the market and acquires private sector, developed service sites on behalf of the government, which is the Gauteng Department, for various beneficiaries. These parcels of land are then allocated to the beneficiaries, and thereby they will then put top structures on top of those parcels of land. And this basically helps to alleviate some of the financial or fiscal strain that all of the treasuries are feeling at the moment. Within the next year and a half, through this program, the GPF will deliver 5,000 stands, which is a significant amount of stands for people. But notably, the GPF has maintained a clean audit opinion from the Auditor General for several consecutive years, reflecting its unwavering commitment to impactful change within Gauteng. Our commitment to inclusivity is not just a buzzword, it's a promise we uphold. We have special funding products that are dedicated to historically disadvantaged companies. The product is called, the Entrepreneur Empowerment Property Fund. It is a gateway to developing transformation of role players in the affordable housing property market. The product is designed as an incubator fund to focus on women and youth. And currently, we have 40% of our book which falls under women, and 27% of our book which falls under the youth in this program. The funding product offers opportunities for new entrants and entrepreneurs into the housing development space, encouraging women to seize the chance to embark and to get involved in the property sector. The Empowerment Fund also ensures that there is a broad-based inclusivity. And there's a trickle-down effect because our transformation policy ensures that 75% of the professionals on the project have majority BEE shareholding. Just recently, on the 21st of September of this year, we launched a building in Benoni. It consisted of 70 units. It was developed by two HDI females, and basically their dream, they are both professionals, their dream was to start a property portfolio, and the GPF assisted them to actually start this through lending programs that we have. So when our clients actually succeed, the GPF achieves its mandate, and once again demonstrating the commitment of empowerment the GPF has. In our effort to enhance human settlement, inclusive economic growth, because that's also really important, economic growth, we actively ensure that the local community is involved in all of our developments. We require community contributions both in local labor and local expenditure. As part of our procurement process, we are also ensuring that we have targets such as GEODI targets, which GEODI stands for Gender, Youth, and Persons with Disability targets, and we need to adhere to those targets and to ensure that we are inclusive and empowering and transformational. We understand that economic growth and empowerment actually go together. In closing, let me emphasize that the GPF's leadership, our executive team, is 100% female and 100% HDI. We are committed to increasing women leadership. We are committed to increasing women leadership within roles within GPF and our organization. And we also are committed to increasing the participation of women in the property sector through our various lending programs. The feminist Diana Mary Charles said, "A woman is the full circle. Within her power is to create, nurture, and transform. Together, we are creating a world where opportunities knows no gender, where diversity is celebrated, and where empowerment is not just a dream, but a reality. Let's continue to be the change we wish to see, and together we will conquer all obstacles." Thank you again for the opportunity, Standard Bank and MediaCo, Topco. I really appreciate it. And ladies, enjoy the rest of the conference. It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thank you so much, Sandra, and thank you to the GPF, just talking about the work that they do, and also, of course, talking about the opportunities that abound for all of you top women. Got a very interesting panel discussion to follow now, where we're going to be talking about connecting markets and empowering women. Initiatives to facilitate women's cross-border trade under the AFCFTA, or, of course, the African Continental Free Trade Area. So let's welcome our panelists to stage. The founder of African Prosperity Fund, Yavi Madurai. Come on up on stage, please. We've got the head of Africa China Banking SA at Standard Bank, Stembile Dlamini, also joining in here. And Senior SDG Investment Advisor at UNDP, Joanne Mander, coming up on stage as well.
Hello. I'm waiting.
Stembile, you're super excited.
Sit close.
Oh, you want to come closer?
I'm moving closer. I'm moving closer.
Love it. All right, Stembile, she's super eager, so I want to start with you. So we're talking about the AFCFTA and this mandate, or this aim, to address the excessively high trade costs and steep tariff barriers in many countries. You're the head of Africa China Banking SA at Standard Bank. Can you tell us how this is creating opportunities for women in the business sector?
Thank you, Carol, and good afternoon to all the phenomenal women that are in this room. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. So I think there's no doubt that tariffs are an obstacle to trade for businesses across Africa. In fact, 3 of the top notable obstacles in doing trade in Africa is custom duties and trade regulations, power outages, and custom requirements, and also followed by forex restrictions and controls within the continent. So Standard Bank released the second edition of the Trade Barometer, which is a comprehensive research tool that has looked at the difficulty of doing trade in Africa with some of the challenges as well as the enablers in the market. And what really came out of that, and this is off the view of the businesses doing business in Africa, is the key ask for governments is one, lowering business tax, but also the addressing the custom duties and some of the custom requirements. And I think AFCFTA is there to solve some of these issues and address some of these issues to enable trade, particularly for women. What is also quite key is the non-trade barriers that women doing businesses in Africa face, and that is directly also going to be addressed by AFCFTA, reducing the cost of doing business and operating in the African market.
Jan, I wanted to find out the importance of cross-border trade in creating economic opportunities for women. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for being here, and I'm very honored to join such an august panel, and also just to say, share the stage with the indomitable Yvonne Chaka Chaka this morning. This is why I insisted on sitting near here, because that was her seat. But I work for UNDP, and a lot of work that we do actually is in supporting our African governments across the continent, and we are part of the Secretariat for the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. And for us, it's very, very important to ensure that we are creating the enabling environment for trade and industry to take off across the African continent. And I think it's important to note that for women, especially if you're looking at cross-border trade, you're looking at 70% of all cross-border trade being women-led, right? And that is, I just want to pause and think about that number, 70%. So that means if we have businesses and if we have policies, regulations that are only fit for purpose for 30% of the market, this is a problem. And so for us, it's really critical that we start to unlock policies and regulations that will really make trade a lot easier for women. We know for a fact that women are facing a lot of challenges, harassment at borders, their products being taken from them, that kind of thing. We need to rethink how we look at trade, and not just for SMEs and the small-scale women in business, but all the way up to the women who are really pioneering new areas of work and logistics and so on. So that's why it's such a critical thing.
Yavi, I know the AFCFTA is recognizing the need to build and also improve the export capacity of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. Why is this sector particularly impactful for women's economic empowerment?
Carol, so when we look at it, and leading on from my two panelists, so let me take 2 steps back first before I get to your question. The first thing is that when we think about cross-border traders, we picture this dusty cross-border, where there's like a boom, maybe, women carrying kind of vegetables on their heads, and we have this view that it is not us, firstly. Secondly, we assume that all cross-border trade is of small items when it comes to women or young women and youth. It is not. If there is a person in this room, maybe, that is maybe a graphic designer, that doesn't necessarily have a formally registered business, but is doing work, is on maybe sites like Elance, which is a freelance website, and you're delivering services for beyond South Africa's borders, but from a cyber or an online perspective, you are a cross-border trader. So, we've got this view from an entrepreneurship perspective, is that entrepreneurship, cross-border traders, we've got these perceptions that women fall into these very disparate categories. We are not. We are all one, firstly. Secondly, we look at cross-border trade as a physical process. It is not. Most of the trade that happens over transactions, and it happens online. So when we look at cross-border traders and we look at a lot of what is happening, so there's obviously what Joanne was saying in terms of the harassment and the sexual dysfunction that is happening at cross-border traders in terms of a physical perspective, yes, that is very, very valid. But in terms of how it will impact, so to now come back to how would the AFCFTA impact and benefit women especially, and especially the youth, from the perspective of small to medium enterprises, is that it is happening already. What is not happening is that we don't have access for our women to be able to access markets. So, for example, and I'm going to give you a quick example to illustrate the point, is that towards the end of last year, South African Airways and what we refer to as KQ, but it's Kenyan Airways, signed a strategic partnership framework agreement. Basically, it said that these two airlines could work together and operate as one, number one. Number two, our president then also signed 90 days visa on arrival for Kenyan citizens, which meant that we were able to have access to a Kenyan market, and Kenya was able to have access to a South African market, which means that goods and services, because it's not only about goods, are able to travel between these two on a 4.5-hour flight, which makes our products that we want to be able to sell that much easier in order to be able to reach another African country, which under normal circumstances would be very, very difficult. Also, under what Sithembile was saying in terms of removing some of those tariffs, now I can buy and I love wearing the umoja, the sneakers, so now I can buy it without having to go there and spend a fortune.
Wow, wow, wow. So huge impact in the women's economic empowerment. Let me come to Sithembile. Let's talk about the World Bank estimating that the FTA will increase Africa's income by $450 billion by 2035 and increase intra-African exports by more than 81%. How will this impact on women-owned businesses? Very quickly as we wrap.
Okay. I like what Yavi touched on, is making trade and cross-border trade quite accessible. And I think what AFCFTA is there to enable is the linkages between markets for women businesses, particularly across Africa. So Standard Bank, we are the only bank in Africa that is part of the Trade Alliance that essentially gives women businesses and businesses across Africa access to the 10 key markets, East Africa being Kenya, Uganda, West Africa being Nigeria and Ghana, and then the SADC region, of course. And I think that allows us the opportunity to act as a trusted platform. This is a digital platform which then essentially enables the reach of being able to do that at a cost-effective way, also equally empowering women as they try and reach other markets.
Great stuff. Joanne, as we wrap, women are estimated to account for 70% of informal cross-border trade in Africa. So how does the FTA benefit these entrepreneurs?
Well, first of all, let's remember that, if we are talking about raising income for women, right? And I'll come to your point about the 70%. Women are better at managing money than men. Let's just speak frank about that. They have a much lower default rate when it comes to having taken a loan. We know through studies that a woman who gets a loan will still have their small business running a year, 2 years after that loan has been taken. compared to male-led businesses. So for me, if we don't build an Africa continental free trade area that supports women in business by creating regulations and creating opportunities for women, especially in public procurement processes, in cross-border trade for services as well as goods, then we are actually reducing the effectiveness of this entire agreement. I think it's really important to recognize that if you're looking at 70% of cross-border trade being women-led, you've got to build an enabling environment that is actually fit for purpose. And women are the engine of economic growth for across Africa trade. So if you don't build that properly, then it doesn't really work. And so I think it's really important. We know certainly the studies within UNDP show that women they dominate Africa's agriculture sector. So ways in which we can help women to invest by investing in their farms, giving them the technologies, access to technologies, access to inputs to improve their productivity. All of those things are things that the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement is trying to address and ensure that you get easier access to those kinds of goods and services so that the women can actually get involved in higher value chains and actually start to create income, not just for day-to-day living, but legacy.
Yeah. Yavi, what policies and reforms do we still need to implement to ensure that women can really benefit from the AfCFTA?
We're going to be here until tomorrow. However, let's just talk specifically AfCFTA too, to obviously cut this short. The AfCFTA Secretariat has got 3 phases of negotiation in terms of various protocols attached to the AfCFTA. One of the biggest protocols that is currently being negotiated as we speak, and I've just gotten back, is the African Women and Youth in Trade Protocol under the AfCFTA. Now, nothing for us without us. Full stop. Full stop. So, we need to make sure, while it is under negotiation, and I am very misbehaved when I am at the African Union, so I need other people to misbehave, but there are things that need to go into this historical document because what we are doing currently is setting it up for our daughters and our great-granddaughters. So if we do not get this protocol right now, that AfCFTA is going to once again be for male-dominated multinational organizations and not for small businesses or for women and youth if we don't get it right now. Nothing for us without us.
Great stuff, and I think a great way as well to round up this conversation. Thank you so much, and a big thanks to all of my panelists for their contribution here. Woo, all right. Really exciting stuff, very, very informative, lots of learnings here today, and we are loving it. We're seeing so many of you that are getting involved online, sending through your comments about all of the discussions that have been taking place. Tsitsi Mutovoni, we are seeing your comments saying, women are the engines for economic growth. Absolutely love this. Hashtag rise above the noise. And by the way, we are trending because all of you are talking about everything that is happening here today. Thank you so much, Tsitsi, for that wonderful comment. Representation matters. The evolution of women's roles. Let's talk about this evolution of women's roles in African films. Yep. This is how female representation is rising across the film industry. Let's discuss it a little bit more. Our panelists, and let's welcome them on stage. The managing director of Izwi Multimedia and executive producer of Dani Odendaal Producties. They also produce under the umbrella Siebendalan. Thandi Ramathisele is here with us today. We've got multi-award-winning businesswoman and media personality, Relebogile Mabotja, here as well. Come on up. CEO and co-founder of Bookings Africa, Fade Ogunro. Please come on up. I'm really very excited, of course, about this panel discussion, something that is close to my heart. We're going to examine how it is that the portrayal of women in African cinema has evolved over the years, from traditional roles to more diverse and empowered characters. Fade?
Hello.
Oh, Fade online, of course.
Joining you online, yes.
No worries, Fade. We can hear you, and we know you are tuned in. So good to have all of you as part of this very exciting panel discussion.
Thank you.
Tanya, let me start off with you.
Yes.
Why does female representation in the film industry matter?
Sure, it matters. It matters so much. I can't even, I don't have the words, but it is so important because first and foremost, it gives women a voice. And other than the voice, it gives, it showcases the different roles and capabilities of women and the women's perspectives. And it matters also because it's an opportunity for women to play in this film and TV economy. It matters because our industry doesn't only have to have executive producers that are male mainly, or head writers that are male mainly, or all the way down the chain up to post-production. Because we know that if you have a woman in the room, in the story room, the stories would be the stories that would resonate with women, because those women have the lived experience. They know the struggles and the triumphs of women. In as much as men can try, they just don't have the lived experience. So I think it does matter. And just while I'm there, we are in the era of the World Cup in France at the moment. And sitting with you here is actually great because just to let the people know in the room, you remember Kappenbecker? Yes, where this young lady started as she was a tiny young lady in a little show called Siadlala. Today she's a powerhouse. She's on global stages. But that's representation because she was the first, as young as she was. But I'm so proud with broadcasters because my background, I'm in production now as an executive producer, and I'm a channel director of two TV channels on the DSTV platforms. But my background is SABC as a broadcast executive. But what I want to say, talking about the World Cup, we have seen, before the World Cup, in fact, the Netball World Cup. Multi-choice Super Sports Television had an all-women crew, which is commendable, and particularly netball being a female sport. And I am hoping that the next Women's World Cup will see that even more elevated. But also, most importantly, quickly, with the Springboks, one of the main presenters on those panels is female and black, and she knows what she's all about. But you can see why it is important, because there are young girls who are watching. She's in France now. They want to be like her, they want to be like you. So representation and gender does matter.
It's so important, yeah. Lebohile, can you tell us how it is that female representation in the film industry is changing?
The way that it's changing, and it's such a weird thing you mentioning the Netball World Cup.
Yeah.
I produced the opening and closing ceremonies of the Netball World Cup, and I think I'm the first woman to have done so in its history. The way that it's changing is being a performer, you don't actually have the final say on anything. Whether I was in the role of an actress, being given a script, or being a presenter. Being an executive producer, you have a massive say, but you also have a massive responsibility. So what's changing is now there's advocacy in the room for women's stories. And not just women's stories, the certain nuances that come with being a woman in the space that we are in. I recall a conversation with the SABC where a group of women were sitting there as we were preparing to launch my talk show Unpacked. And I was quarter to giving birth. And they in essence said to me, please don't worry about anything. It's up to you. You want to breastfeed on set, you breastfeed on set. We're behind you all the way. And if it was a room of only men, that conversation wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
We all know that that conversation wouldn't have happened. Because a first-time show, you're nervous. You're not going to bring up the fact that, guys, I'm quarter to giving birth. How are we dealing with this? Are we hiding a pregnancy? We're about to do another season. It's becoming a flagship show for S3 that just recently rebranded and relaunched. So the way that things are changing is that certain conversations are now easier in a room where maybe an actor or a presenter was unafraid to bring certain things up. I'll give a simple example. When I have a male and a female host, the female must be paid more because she costs more to look the way that she does.
Yeah.
I mean, it is as simple as if I have to go to an event, there is a makeup artist, there is a stylist involved. A man can wear the same black suit and you will not notice a thing. I mean, I don't care if it's one's a tux, comes, like, you look the same. Whereas the pressure on us to look different, the pressure on us to look phenomenal, and then the pressure on us to be exceptional at what we do is real. So how things are changing is now there's advocacy in the room for conversations that may have never happened. Now we can comfortably say, actually, because you're on your period, let's see how we're going to switch this intimacy scene around.
Yeah.
Now you can say that to your intimacy coach. Can this man not have to be on top of me for this scene? Because there's a female director. Can I rather switch over and do something else? So advocacy for me is so critical.
Wow, okay. Fade, talk to us about the portrayal of women in African cinema and how that's evolving.
Hi everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. So the portrayal of women in African cinema has been evolving quite a lot over the last decade or so. There's a specific focus, or there's a trend that I've noticed that's now depicting more diverse and the multifaceted female experiences. So no longer are we just the girlfriend or the wife or the cleaner or the cook. Recent films have increasingly highlighted the complexities of women's lives, delving into their struggles, their achievements, their aspirations. And I think there's a notable shift towards presenting women as independent, presenting them as empowered individuals. And if I dare say, actually now challenging the traditional gender roles and the societal expectations. I also think that this trend towards the portrayal of women as a lot more African women as a lot more diverse signifies a growing recognition of the importance of gender inclusivity, which actually ties into what the lady just mentioned just before me about empowering women by paying them more. And I completely agree with that. My experience as an executive producer and also now as a tech CEO, I always, I'm very passionate about the economic empowerment of women and also closing that gender pay gap as well. So I commend you for that. So generally, I do believe that there's empowerment in storytelling within the African cinematic landscape. And now we're being a lot more diverse with the evolution of women's roles in cinema.
We're loving this evolution, Let's talk about maybe some of the more diverse and empowered characters that we're seeing on our screens today, Thandi.
I mean, I think to the point that has just been made, I mean, women are no longer seen as just baby makers, just being in the kitchen or being the prostitute or the side piece. You are, yes, you are now seeing women achievers. Very soon, and things that are being done, there are shows that are being done where women lawyers who own the firm will be seen on screen. And women are seen as business women, doctors, you know, and also just people who have agency, who can stand their ground against any powerful man, you know. Women like Lindy were on the river, for example, or, you know, in The Queen, for example, on Seven de Lan, women like Lisedi Moloi, for example, who's a lawyer, you know. Yeah, I think those are the examples that I can give.
Yeah.
I think the characters I'm most interested in women portraying are the Avas and the Shonda Rhimes. So I observe credit rolls when they roll up, because it is amazing that you can have, you know, Eloise Keaton being a lawyer, but it's even more amazing that a Shonda Rhimes can strike a multi-million-dollar deal with Netflix because they know that she will deliver. So the roles that I'm most interested in are the ones where we are the decision makers. We are the ones who say, let us go and search the type of stories we want to take to platforms. Let us be the ones to strike certain deals. It cannot be that an Oprah Winfrey is the only reference we have as somebody who can bring the color purple to life. It really cannot.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Shonda Rhimeses, they are a dime a dozen. So for me, the portrayal of characters are the ones that are building these characters, the ones that are going to challenge the writing room to say, actually, I think let's try something else. And the ones that are going to sit with the big deal makers, be it Paramount, Disney, Netflix, and say, if that's the direction you want to go with this season, then I'm going to take this deal somewhere else.
Well, okay. Fidel.
I completely agree. Following on from what's been mentioned, there was a movie called Atlantics that was directed by Mati Diop, and the protagonist there, Ada, is portrayed as a resilient and determined young woman, and she was challenging traditional gender norms. And I remember in 2019 when Genevieve Enaji directed Lionheart, and that was such a huge success in Nigeria, not just because of the lead character, Adaeze, and she was depicted as a capable and determined businesswoman, but actually it's because it was the first movie by a female Nigerian director. And that was more of the uproar and more of the, I guess, the celebration than the actual story itself. And following on from what was just mentioned, you've got Mo Abudu in Nigeria who owns Ebony Live Films. She's got her own cinema, she's got her own network deal with Disney, she's got a network deal with Sony, and she's got a network deal with Netflix. Wow. So she is, quote unquote, the Oprah, the Shonda Rhimes, the Ava of Nigeria, but she's also using that platform to open doors for more business women. Because when you are at the helm where you can actually make the decisions, then you can actually open the floodgates for more diversity and for more inclusivity. So it's not just the role that we play behind the screen, but it's actually who are the decision makers that actually allow for these decisions to be made in the first instances, and that's where the focal point of change needs to start with.
Yep. Relebogile, you look at the direct contribution of the film industry to the economy of South Africa, projected at nearly 4 billion rand. So how can we use this economy to empower women?
Can I start by saying it's too little? Let's start there. 4 billion rand is nothing. I look forward to the day where a client says, Relebogile, I've got an amazing budget, come through. I'm tired of the calls that say we have no money, please come make magic. So let's start at changing the 4 billion rand to $10 billion US, which I think our stories are powerful enough for us to get to that point. But in terms of the upskilling aspect of the conversation, it really, really is a difficult terrain, because it's very easy to say, we're going to have interns on the set, let's only make it girls. But there's certain spaces that have been specifically for men. Speaking of the Netball World Cup, we don't have female Steadicam operators in this country. We had to import her from the UK, right? So when you want to start saying, let's have an all-female this, now you have to say, where are the lighting technicians? Where are the AV and tech individuals? Where are the set designers that are women? So I think it is making a conscious effort to intentionally start placing people in certain spaces, because it's very easy for a young girl intern to say, I want to see what wardrobe is doing, or art department. I want to place them in sound. I want to place them in certain spaces because there's certain companies that are very male, if not all male, and are still very white. So that's a difficult part, and I would say, I don't know if it requires specific schools, because it's like every time a person speaks of a school, get AFDA. Where are the other AFDAs in Limpopo? Where are the other AFDAs in Venda, in the Free State, that are saying, we're not just going to look at the directing or the producing abilities, let's go into technicons and create a department specifically for those highly specialized skills of lighting designers. Send them abroad to go and watch The Voice and Idols being done. And that does require money. So it's not just playing with the girls where they already are, what they're already interested in. It's looking and saying, these specific skilled departments where there are no women, what are we doing in specifically driving women there, so we can start to have that industry developed. And please know it is a global issue. It's not unique to South Africa. It is rare. You'll be like, oh, there's stunt artists that are women. But there aren't enough JLo films for there to be a JLo stunt artist.
In South Africa,
Yes, there aren't
That's
enough.
true.
Even in animation, spaces that have been really, really, really big for men. Animation is such a new space where we can do such beautiful things. So it's a different kind of conversation. It's not just money, it's not just building schools. It's also reminding young girls there are other things you can do. You don't just have to be Carol broadcasting from the World Cup and being the first woman. You can be the one who said, I did the entire lighting design for that stadium.
Can I just add to that? Because, it's a critical point. The upskilling and the training and development, and I think the lack of information, because I think most of the young people, particularly women in this case, because I think the topic is about women, they engage mostly with what they see on screen. And social media has also made it feel like the most important part of being in the business is being on screen, whereas the power really is at the back. Most of the people at the back, particularly in South Africa, unlike the Shonda Rhimes and the Eva DuVernays, in South Africa, the people behind the scenes are not as known as the people in the front. Areas like line producing, you need to have a BCom degree. But I don't think a lot of BCom graduates realize that they can actually have a space in production. We need female DOPs, which is, that those guys come at a very high cost. We need to train up camera women that can also get to those levels. And while you have the training institutions, as you mentioned, we need to broaden them up. But in my experience, even if you've been in an institution, our kind of industry is a doing industry. It is the development that you get on the job that is going to be very critical. Areas such as post-production, areas such as ownership of studios, set designing, as you've mentioned. Technical directors, supervise, being an executive producer, executive producer, head writer, those are some of the high stakes within, that's where the decisions are made. But our young girls still don't aspire to that. They don't aspire to be the top director in the production. They want to have the lead role. And that's what we need to make them understand, that it's bigger than just being on screen.
Need to educate them. Are you listening, young ladies? They are. A big round of applause to our panelists. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
For your contribution. Thank you, Fede, as well, for being online and joining us and giving us your input. Thank you. I've got a comment from Hopin as well, and for this last panel. Khomotso Matilda Nebudzivad is saying, profound women should stop competing and uplift each other. Success of one woman can be a blessing to another. Hashtag rise above the noise. Khomotso, we most certainly agree here. So now it's time for our final panel discussion. Oh, I know, we want to be here all day, but remember, we still have day 2 that's coming up. And to round it up today, we're going to be discussing why inclusive and transformative technology and digital education is crucial for a sustainable future. So we're going to talk digital. Please welcome our speakers to the stage, Head of Digital and E-Commerce at Standard Bank, Kim Holmes. Come on up. We've got Nosizwe Dlengezele Singakwe, who's the Sector Head for Energy, Natural Resources and Utilities, ENU at Wipro. Managing Executive Public Enterprises, Vodacom Business, a sister from another mother, Poppy Shabalala.
Hello.
And Zandile Njavela Mamponi, who's the Supplier Inclusion and Diversity Lead at EMA Accenture. A round of applause for our panelists.
Hi, Poppy, how are you? Good, good to see you.
Looking gorgeous. Here we go. All right. Thank you so much for being a part of this really exciting panel discussion. Let's start off, Zandile. Let's talk to you first. Now, compared to half of men, only 1 in 3 African women uses the internet. Women on the continent are also 30% less likely than men to own a smartphone. How do we start increasing access to technology for women and girls?
Thank you so much, Carol. You know, it's not just women in general, but I want to touch on the point that it's specifically women in business, right? IFC World Bank did the study that said less than 7% of micro enterprises actually use smartphones or business or computers for their businesses, right? But this is like less than what the normal person, because there's 22% entry into the digital space. But yet when we talk about business, we are not using these smartphones or computers to improve our businesses. But the study also further says that the reason is the women are scared of technology. Number 2, they cannot relate to it. It's not accessible to them, and it does not speak to their business, right? So I think it's a myriad of reasons why there's less women, but in general, women fear change, and they fear the use of embracing technology. And that's why I like the study so much, because further it tells us that what can we do to solve this problem? And what we can do is about, there lies an opportunity for innovation. Yeah. There lies an opportunity for reskilling and upskilling for the new digital age, and to create digital solutions that speak to the level of the digital skills that the women are at that point in time.
Kim, let's talk about the importance of training more women in the STEM fields, including ICT.
Thanks, Carol. I think, you know, education, according to the UN, is one of the major goals, goal number 4, and it's creating the ability for sustainable and inclusive education for all. Now, in many ways, women have often, especially on the African continent, have been affected by social norms, inequalities in society, and not necessarily being given the opportunity to have any education, never mind education in science, technology, economics or mathematics. So I think if I can just mention some stats, if you think about that nearly half the workforce in non-STEM fields are women, but only 29% of women are qualified and in the STEM fields in the workplace. However, in Africa, it's different. There's 47% of graduates coming out of our tertiary education institutions. That is 47% are women. So why does that drop when we get into the actual workforce? And we're finding some of the reports, the case studies that have been done show that societal norms, these pressures in the workplace often form barriers to entry for women to pursue careers in those fields. And if you think about engineering as one of those careers that require STEM learning, only 7% of women in Africa are engineers. So there really is a need for us to focus more fully on those subject choices for girls and women. Because it's not only about learning in schools and in higher education, it's also about women then growing themselves throughout their lives. And I think some of those barriers to entry talk about sexual harassment, unequal societal norms, the changing the dynamic in society around how women are seen in the workforce. And I mean, Thandi and Relafilwe, they spoke about some of these aspects that women are seen as baby makers, or they're seen as the lead actress rather than the person behind the camera. Now, I think there's much we can do and much that bring to society if we had to focus more on women choosing these subjects in their learning. So I want to mention some of those. So some of the things that we would benefit from is we'd increase our talent pool. We'd have a greater talent pool to choose from. We wouldn't have the dire need for bringing or flying or buying talent into the continent to deal with these types of careers. We can reduce the gender pay gap. Many of us know that there is a large gap when it comes to a woman and a male having very different pay scales based on historical trends. There's also, we can promote diversity and inclusion across many aspects of our society and the workplace. Often if you put a woman in a leadership position or into positions where they're able to design in the ICT field, they will look at inclusive solutions. They will look at things that allow for the entire spectrum of all individuals to be involved in those solutions, not just for a certain demographic or a certain gender. We'll address the global shortage of STEM workers. We do have a global shortage, and I think there's a dire need for us to start promoting this in the workplace across the African continent and in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Nosizwe, let's talk about numbers. 38%, South Africa has a higher percentage of female ICT graduates than the global average. So how has digital transformation impacted women's livelihoods, and what has been our role in the transformation?
Thanks, Carol, and good day to everyone. I think when we talk about digital transformation, we need to understand that it's not something that began, yesterday. The transformation has been happening, I think, for the past 40 years. I think that's one thing that I'd like to extract. The second piece that I'd also like to extract, which is very, very important from an impact point of view, is that we take it for granted the segmentation of women, especially in the African continent, a continent that we are personally quite passionate about, both myself and the organization that I work for. And when we look at the demographics of women in Africa, we're talking about women who lack access to basic infrastructure. We're talking about women who lack basic access to food, water, healthcare, women who even lack basic access to basic education tools that we take for granted. I think when we sit in this room, we take it for granted that I can pick up a book and I can just read it, or so can my daughter or my niece. A number of strides have been made from an impact point of view to really address women's livelihood, I think throughout the segments as we think about them. I'll give you examples, and I'm sure Bobby, will relate to these. Digital banking. If you look at what M-Pesa has done in Kenya by providing access to rural women, small businesses in areas where banking infrastructure was simply not available, it has transformed and even taken over the method, I think, of economic participation within that environment. And that's a model that's really being, I think, driven across all other markets in the SADC region, and we also see quite a lot of it coming up in West Africa. Today, the term is fintech, and we've labeled it in such a fancy way, but the genesis of how those technologies were actually brought about was to really drive a social impact where infrastructure is not in place. And the biggest piece that I take away using M-Pesa as an example is that digital transformation can leapfrog Africa, particularly as an emerging market where the speed at which infrastructure needs to be deployed simply cannot keep up with the needs of our markets. And so you really think of it as an enabler for that. Energy, which is a space that I'm incredibly passionate about in terms of impact. We've all experienced load shedding, but the way that certain segments experience load shedding vis-a-vis the poor of the poorest is very, very different. Having no lights for a family where the mother needs to feed her children and does not have the alternative of going to get takeouts means that potentially those children will go to bed hungry. So if you don't give her the digital tools, for an example, to be able to look at the push ESCOM application, to time her cooking, to time her preparation for kind of uniform for the kids, it really does translate into quite a serious disaster. Now you need to think of that impact in a market where there is no electricity. What does it mean? And I think what that really means is you can use these applications to navigate women to places where they can seek help in moments that's quite important for them. And then lastly, I think two areas where there's been probably the greatest impact has been in agriculture. We know that the thought around co-ops and how co-ops are run has been really enhanced and made sophisticated by the usage of technology, people being able to determine the size of their produce, price their produce, and then ensure that when it lands at whatever destination, they're going to get a fair share of what needs to come back to them without being swindled within that supply chain. And then ultimately, mHealth. Healthcare, women of Africa, we know that issues such as malaria, HIV and AIDS, primary healthcare for children. There have been strides that have been made on the continent bringing these applications and tools to enable nurses to go to homes, 150 kilometers where there's no access to a clinic to go and treat patients there. And therefore the impact has just been not only at a development of the technology, but probably at a user level, most pertinent for women more than any, I think, other demographic grouping that we have.
Bobby, can you tell us how women are contributing to innovative solutions in the workplace?
Thank you, Carol. And all protocol observed. It's late in the afternoon. Okay. This matter, it still remains a reality that women are less paid, not in good education, very few in the leadership role. But when you come to technology, that gap is even wider. I mean, women and women and girls are still underrepresented in the industries. Even in academia, you find that that is a problem. But interesting enough is that the world needs more women in technology, basically. And it means that now we need to get to the root cause of gender equality. We need to start addressing the issues of literacy gaps, the issues of pay, and even influence the employment policy when it comes to advancing women in technology. Technology, by its nature, is innovation. And you bring new solutions, you develop new solutions that will change life and everything else. But for women to make an impact in this, you need them to be intimate with the innovation process. I'll just make an example of where some of the innovations that went wrong because women were not part of it. Think about voice recognition. This is an artificial intelligence technology that is meant to drive for IR. You know, when it started, it could not recognize women voice command because women were not there in the testing phase. They never thought that there would be women that would be using this technology. For decades, women and children were dying in car crashes, even though the airbag was deployed. Because when they tested and brought the airbag in life, they used the crash test dummies that have got the height of a man, weight of a man, and they forgot about women and children. So these are the things that says we really need to get more women in this space. But interesting as well is that even though the innovation and inventions that has been done by women is as long as the list of the other gender, it's not spoken about, it's hidden, and more by the gender that wants to take the credit for it and shift you on the other side. It's also interesting, I think I should take this opportunity that we are here and that we need to be different from how things have been done. Let's shout out to the women that brought GPS technology. Let's shout out to the women that brought coffee filters. Let's shout out to the women that brought windscreen wipers. Let's shout out to the women that brought Wi-Fi technology. We never hear about that because as much as the invention was there, it was hidden and the people that wanted to take the credit spoke loud about it. And if I may just say something quickly, it's proven, especially in the science research, that the team that has got more women in the research team have got a higher chance of breaking through. Not just because of diversity or other things, but because women inject their great creativity. And they start looking at things differently from how the other gender was looking at it. A study that was done on entrepreneurship, they found out that most of the female-led startups do better. And I've got examples as well as myself. I've seen women startups prospering far more faster than the other gender. But we don't talk about it, which is why then you find that interventions like the Standard Bank Top Women Conference will always command the highest respect, will always be highly recognized for the fact that they lift up and they shine the brightest light on women in Africa.
Thank you. Zandile, how can we ensure gender equality in the tech sector?
I love the examples that Sis Bobby spoke on, you know. Those women that created those things, you know, they were tired. I remember I watched the story of Mary Anderson, who created the windscreen shield wipers. She was tired of being late because Every time she will travel in New York, they had to get out of the car and clean the windshield manually. Do you get what I'm saying? The lady that created the home security system, she was tired of the high crime rate in her neighborhood and the low response of police, and she did something. Now, when you're sick and tired of something, right, innovation comes, right? And I think, thank you. And that's where the sweet spot is for us women. We are the consumers of all these products that are being made. We are the biggest consumers, more than men. If you look at your household goods, everything in your house, it's the woman's influence that makes that decision buying power. Even if your husband's buy the car, chances are he doesn't know it, but you influenced him some way or another, right? So because we hold the deciding and the decision to buy these goods, we should have a say in how they are manufactured.
Yes.
It is therefore important that we give and encourage our young women entry, number one, into the workplace of science. The research labs, like our Sis Poppy said, the research labs, the chemistries and everything, so that their woman insight is inputted in the output of what we consume at the end.
Yes.
For me, that's number one. Number two, we need to give them opportunities into the supply chain, right? With my SMEs, over 50% of them are women-owned SMEs, because I know that I can rely on women to deliver. With all the multiple hats that we wear, and the conversation that we spoke about earlier in the morning about the having to care and wear all these multiple hats, at the end of the day, we deliver, because we know that there is a long line of beneficiaries behind us, right, that go beyond our immediate families. So for me, it's opening up our workplace into positions and job opportunities of STEM, but also opening up our supply chains into the commodities of tech. And let's stop this thing of women belong in the soft services. That's great, it's good, we've got plenty of them there. Now we need to increase the commodities in women. And because we do have the purchasing power and the buying power, we deserve to have an input in how these things are made.
Kim, I don't know if you want to add to that. How do we ensure gender equality in this sector?
I really do think, the ladies have, they've mentioned where we need to change the dynamic, where we need to uplift our girls and women. But I think, when somebody is successful as a woman, we should start mentoring. We should rise together, and not this view of, okay, I've made it, I'm able to now relax, and I can just sit back and let it be. It's really about us standing together and rising together and supporting those who are still on their way up. And I think when young girls and women who are striving to be more, do more, come into the information, communication and technology area in the STEM industries, I think if they see more women achieving and more women being prepared to go the hard yard, stand against societal norms, be heard and be seen to break through those barriers, that saying make it through the glass ceiling. I think we shouldn't be afraid to reach up or reach down, to lend a helping hand and be willing to actually also ask for that assistance and mentorship and coaching and say, how did you get it right? It's events like this as well that allow us to make those connections, to create those network opportunities that allow us to say, well, I just need one gap for somebody to help me with the startup, to help with some funding, to help with some support, even if it's just a recommendation. we shouldn't be afraid to lend that helping hand, whether it's in the form of a business, whether it's in the form of personal investment of your time, and just sharing the techniques and the tricks of the trade. I think it would go a long way to just adding to the success of others.
We've got a comment. We've got a comment from Tariro Mutawarira on Hop In. Tariro, thank you so much for this comment. He says, we need to start giving credit to female scientists. We certainly agree there. Lumac saying we complete each other. We should be able to collaborate and team up well. This question, I think, let me ask Unosizwe here. What is it that can be gained by bringing women and other marginalized groups into the sector?
What can be gained? I mean, gosh, I think that question has been answered throughout the day, right? What happens when you bring diverse people into a room? But specifically for women, which is very, very important, and I think I mentioned this earlier, is that we need to understand that the drivers of innovation, that social impact actually affects the female more than it affects any other demographic group. So for us to ensure that we are around those tables, we are going to ensure that we're building solutions to solve problems that we have, not only for ourselves, but for our families. They've also spoken about, I mean, today throughout the panels, you know, there's the commercial and the business part of it, right, that shows that bringing in diversity into those rooms and bringing in the female thought, you know, those businesses perform 48% than those who don't. But I also think that there's just a moral obligation that we need to have as people, because I think we can talk business and we can talk all sorts of kind of large verbs, but what about all those women who are not in the business value chain? What happens to their ideas, their thoughts, and what they have to contribute? And it really starts in the home. There was a study that was done that showed that the reason why women actually struggle to get into kind of STEM sector subjects begins in the home. From the ages of about 2 until 8, we know that from a school level, boys and girls perform pretty much the same in both science and maths and all of those primary school education. And then what happens is that as they begin to hit pubescent and teenage years, girls are then given tasks as, you must wash the dishes, you must look after the kids, you must cook, and then what the boys are told is that you need to go and study. And if you have grown up in a home that similarly looked like mine, that was the messaging from my home as well. And so already you're creating a mindset that says that what I have to use cognitively in my brain does not actually contribute to anything meaningful in academia nor in innovation. Another piece that we realize in business, and as much as we try and accelerate, you know, women's participation in a large number of programs, is that where the real bottleneck sits is not that women are not getting into the sector, it's that women are leaving the sector too early and organizations are unable to retain them. And so you find, you know, male and female both enter into the same L1 level, but chances of, you know, the guy being promoted 3-4 bands up is far higher, I think 78% higher than the female. And in fact, the probability of the female actually leaving the sector in its entirety also shoots up to those levels around 70%. So we really need to have a very structured and a very formal method of saying, why are women leaving the sector early? Are we addressing issues of when women have children and they go away to have children for 3-4 years, how do we bring them back to the sector and create space for them? You know, we need to think of situations of, from a developer's perspective, technology moves so fast that losing a year or two, how do we then get them back and retrain them so that they become on par? And then all of these efforts consolidated, which really is about kind of the home mindset, the approach, that we take when women do enter the sector is going to ensure that they have then the right seat and they can bring the ideas forward with confidence. And women, they keep quiet in the board tables. And I don't know how many of you have experienced this, when ideas are being shared and they sit with the most brilliant ideas and they will share an email to their male colleague and say, you know, I think this would have worked really well. And then 3 meetings later, that same idea is raised by someone else, not of their own voices. So confidence also has a big role to play in it. But definitely the world, for where the world is going, without that collaborative mindset, I doubt that we'll be able to innovate for true social impact that is for everyone else.
Yeah. We're saying inclusive and transformative tech and digital education, really so crucial for a sustainable future. Let's get closing comments. Poppy?
Yeah. Yeah. But like Nosiso already said, is that what organizations are not aware of is the opportunity loss in not lifting up women into the boardroom side, because there is so much that women bring in. I mean, research says that organizations that are led by women, there's empathy, there's good productivity, and people stay long. There's a lot of loyalty that comes with it as well. But all the time, we are not getting ourselves in that space. But in the tech space, I mean, I constantly get the question asked that, would you choose IT again? And I'll say I'll choose IT over and over. And it's because for personal reasons, now I'm not recruiting people for IT, but for personal reasons, you're always on top of things. You're always on the go. You know things. I mean, as a mother and a parent, in my own house, people will be saying, take away the devices, and it includes me, because I'm constantly on my device, even if we're eating or watching TV. But I'm just saying that this is an environment where when you are in and when you are really on top of it, you will see the best results that have got meaningful influence in the life of people, not necessarily just commercial benefits.
Wow, okay. Zandile, closing comment from you?
Yes, I'd like to speak to my entrepreneurs that are women-owned businesses in the ICT sector. For me, you need to be an innovation scanner. You know, like everywhere you're looking, you're just looking on how do you improve your world through innovation, through the use of technology, and through the adoption of new digital technologies. If you do that, you are set for high success, right? The study shows that if you adopt the new digital technologies, whether it's AI, robotics, you name it, you are 8 times better to succeed than those that don't use the adoption, right? Your sales are shooting through the roof. You're employing double the labor force, right, by adopting those new technology. So be an innovation scanner. And number 2, embrace technology, embrace the new digital age. And that's what's going to be your competitive edge.
Okay.
I'm going to keep it very brief. And I think together as women, we can not only rise up, but we can bring all of society along with us, because ultimately we are the mothers, the sisters, the daughters of society, and we are the ones who are willing to bring everybody along with us, which I'm not sure is always there in the current world. So I think together we can do it. We just have to be willing to go the extra mile, and we have to be willing to rise up together.
Yeah, we agree.
You know, I'm going to use myself as an example, Carol, around kind of my closing remarks. In my mid-40s, I decided to leave the business of big infrastructure development and moved into IT. And everybody thought that I was crazy. Because how is this possible? Are you not afraid? You know, they're going to talk to you about cloud and SAP and all of these things. And I had one response. I said, I took a scan of what all jobs, all businesses of the future are going to look like. And I realized that by the time I reach 50, the job that I have now is going to be a digital job. And so it is better that I leave where I am now and prepare myself for the future that I want to live in. And my only remark, for the women in this room, is if there's anything that you do as a takeaway when you leave this conference, is you need to be able to have a conversation with your daughters and your sons and yourselves and your partners and understand that what is my role going to look like 5 years from now? And you will walk away with an answer that it's going to be participating in this digital environment, economy that we're in. And if you are not going to be a participant today, you will be left out of the future economy that we're trying to build. And it's an exciting space, and it is not a threatening space, but instead what it really is, it's a transformative space. So I really encourage all females. We are looking every single day for female skills. We import skills because we don't have those skills. People talk about 40% unemployment. We talk about 40% shortages of skills in this area. So I really encourage you, and I encourage your daughters and your nieces, and really people around your community to embrace the transformation that we're part of.
Love it. Thank you so much to our panelists on our final panel for today. Another round of applause, everyone. You guys are amazing. How was that for day one? Wow. Just want to say a big and heartfelt thank you to our incredible speakers, all of our incredible speakers today, our sponsors, you, our attendees, for making day one of this conference a resounding success. I think we're already feeling the ripples of women empowerment and progress. We've created these ripples, and they're going to extend far beyond these walls. So as we step out into the world, let us continue to rise above the noise. Let us continue to empower ourselves and make a lasting impact. Now, just a few announcements. Someone left their phone at the Sanofi booth. So if you forgot your phone there, please don't forget to collect on your way out. Tomorrow morning, as I said earlier on, please make sure that you arrive early because we'll be having a treasure hunt on the expo floor between 8 and 9 a.m. Some fantastic prizes to be won there and exciting discoveries to be made. So let's head off. Let us recharge and prepare for another remarkable day, day 2 of the Standard Bank Top Women Conference. And just a reminder that you are also so important to making this conference a success. Your commitment to positive change is the driving force behind the conference. So looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Travel safely back home, and we'll see you then. Au revoir.
Can I turn you on by my word spell? Look into my eyes, think I want you, can't tell. Me, I keep it sexy, daddy, so I can't fail. Keep it gangster for the cowards, so I give them hell. Call me misfit, lips fit a gang of trash. Riskless now, cause I make a gang of cash. Like glam, still street with the do-rag. Slang, spit, gang, chain speech, how they do that? Watch they mouths drop, watch the crowds pop up and act out. Brawls with the screw face, smash on and knock out. Ain't chain gang to run me, I run the game. If I gotta keep it gritty, so be it. I'm supposed to change like simple. Busy bras ain't messing with my mental. Natural born hustling shit, check what I've been through. Got mine, took it from you, and then the slot mines exec to my own. Dog, I'm on the dot.